The entire point of this video is to get you to try a game you otherwise wouldn't. That's it. I don't care if we're starting a YouTube career or getting subscribers and views, I just want to share thoughts on a bunch of games I beat recently and share them with you. For some quick background, I've been working in the AAA games industry for about 5 years now at places like Blizzard and Mojang, and I love games. This is the first time I've done this in video form, but since 2023, to get through my backlog, I've been recording and talking about and writing about games that I've completed. And I'm sure you can relate, as time goes on and games come out, the backlog gets longer. By just making something in the background and writing about games, I was able to clear about 60 to 80 games fully each year. So with that said, no spoilers of course in this video, but there are some audio discrepancies. I was kind of a learning process throughout this whole thing, and some audio is good and sounds fine, and some audio sounds not that good. I had a whole data recovery thing, some projects were lost, and the audio doesn't sound good. Anyway, just skip through if you don't care for bad audio, but yeah, here it is. Here's about 60 games I beat over the past, I don't know, year-ish, and my thoughts on them. Enjoy. Earlier this year, during the Xbox Developer Showcase in January, Team Ninja announced Ninja Gaiden 4, the first new mainline game in the series in over 10 years. Toward the end of their segment, they also announced Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, a remaster in Unreal Engine 5 of their previous Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 game. What a huge surprise, and I guess thematic with ninjas because they shadow dropped it immediately afterwards. From there, I turned on my PS5, bought the game, and launched it. I loved Ninja Gaiden 1 on the original Xbox when I beat it for the first time in December of 2023. So much that I bought a sealed copy of it to display on my game shelf. Now, I always meant to get onto the second Ninja Gaiden game, and this was the perfect opportunity. Ninja Gaiden has always had the stigma around it that they are overly hard and difficult to play. On the Reddit thread of the reveal of Ninja Gaiden 2, someone mentioned how that, quote, the first game was so difficult that an employee at GameStop told me that they were to stop taking the game because it was returned so much. But as someone who did make it through the first game, although on the easiest difficulty, it did make getting into 2 easier. It instantly felt familiar, tight, satisfying, and fun. Even though I ended up clearing Ninja Gaiden Black 2 in about 2 days after its release on normal, I never found myself to get stuck on any bosses or places in the game. Sure, I'd die maybe 1 or 2 times at maximum at spots, but I felt like it was a really fun and fair difficulty setting that makes me want to tackle the game again on the higher difficulties later on. So difficulty-wise, as a standard to get into the game, anyone could pick it up and enjoy their time. There's even a super easy option for those who just want to breeze through it. Combat specifically felt really satisfying and crunchy. You're jumping around, unlocking weapons and Nimpo, which are like spells you can cast out. You'll be upgrading them, unlocking new moves, and then hacking the limbs off enemies as they explode into piles of gore. It's outrageous in the best way possible. Weapons all feel one of a kind, offering insane amounts of combos per weapon. I mean, just look at these. It feels like a fighting game where you're mashing these combo inputs on your opponents, but in the hack and slash genre. For the record, I'm no Ninja Gaiden expert or even remotely good at the game, maybe memorizing a few combos to get me through, but if the game has anything, it has depth of combat and a high skill ceiling. I found myself rotating my weapons constantly because each one felt so good to play with. I think the starting weapon, Dragon Sword, and Eclipse Scythe were my favorites to use overall. Graphically, the game looks pretty good. I beat it on my PS5 Pro, and there was some texture pop in here and there, but generally the game looked great. Each level is nice and long, being mostly geographically and environmentally distinct, and as you progress through levels, they even change scenically, bringing new challenges, enemies, and always ending with a boss. Just feels like a fun traditional video game, you know? Here's some weapons, pace throughout the game, here's some stuff to upgrade them, here's some enemies to beat up, go from level to level, kill a boss, hone your skills as a ninja, rinse and repeat. The story took a backseat for some high-octane gameplay, and I didn't necessarily hear any standout songs. It does have its jank, however, and is awkward in some places, mostly relating to its camera and stiff movement, which I'll get into in a second. Also, the Ghost Piranha enemies make a comeback from their first game, and they still are super fucking annoying, biting and stunning you and then running away. Regarding the game's criticisms, I felt similar to Giovanni Colantonio of digitaltrends.com, who wrote an article named Ninja Gaiden 2 Black reminds me of just how much games have changed. He says the following, quote, "The unwieldy camera seemed to have a mind of its own, nauseously pivoting around as I moved. Where I expected smooth, fluid combat, I instead found myself stiffly cutting through enemies with no lock-on to ground me. I tried to block incoming enemy attacks as a tutorial instructed me, but a lack lack of feedback left me feeling like it was a useless tool. Everything about it feels a bit off in ways I couldn't quite place. Regarding the game's useless blocking, enemies don't signpost their devastating moves with flashing red lights. There isn't an automatic parry that rewards players for timing their block just right. It's a counterattack tool, but one that doesn't do the work for me. To master it, I need to throw out everything I learned about blocking out the window and learn to work blocks into my combos. Instead, it's a maneuver that requires thought, attention, and skill. To summarize, Colantonio ends his article saying that he fears games are losing their inventive spirit with the industry becoming more and more risk averse. Is there still room for games to alienate some players in favor of those who really get what's going on? Will the upcoming Ninja Gaiden 4 follow modern trends and have players parrying glowing attacks, or remain true to itself as it has been for the past 20 years? It's an interesting thought experiment of how video game design, especially when it comes to quality of life, player feedback, controller input, and I guess general design has improved over time. When you play older video games, is it fair to criticize a game's poor quality of life and or design choices when that standard didn't even exist and was still being iterated upon at that time? Do remasters and remakes owe it to the player to adopt modern game design philosophies and accessibilities to incorporate them into their game, or should remasters and remakes remain fundamentally the same? Once upon a time, there was a subdivision of EA named EA Big that would pump out these experimental and exaggerated sports games like NBA Street, NFL Street, and of course the SSX series. I haven't touched a real sports game since, I guess, FIFA 2013 on the Xbox 360, because just no real, I guess, sports game has caught my attention since then. But I always knew of the SSX series, and specifically the legendary aura that the SSX Tricky game had on the PS2. Real quick before we go in, look at the box of the game. It's holographic, but for mine, when you turn it around, I actually have a Blockbuster sticker on the back of mine. That's it, I just wanted to share that. In SSX Tricky, you'll start your game playing as one of two snowboarders, Elise, who's voiced by Lucy Liu, or Eddie, voiced by David Arquette, and then going through multiple different levels around the world racing other snowboarders, or boarding solo in show-off matches where you try to earn as many points as possible while hoping to reach certain point thresholds. You'll start at the rank of newbie, and by earning medals, you'll be going up the ranks and leveling up your stats. You can even level up edging if you want. There's lots to unlock, from new costumes that change your snowboarder's look, boards that increase your stats, and new snowboarders who each have entirely unique tricks and moves. These tracks you go on normally are these huge gauntlets, sometimes taking a few minutes to complete, and each are unique and inspired. Starting on the simple and barebones first mountain, you snowboard down on the track named R&B, then later on in the game, the track Mercury City Meltdown, going down a gigantic city that's been completely frozen over and packed with snow. You can tell the devs were having a lot of fun making these levels. Earn a medal in every level for both the race and show-off modes, and you unlock the secret Pipe Dream level, which is essentially just a ton of jumps and half pipes. Each stage is really distinct from one another, with plenty of secrets and alternative routes to go down, while slowly ramping up the difficulty, intensity, and complexity with each track. As I found myself playing and getting better, you find yourself in this zen state where you're landing risky tricks, nailing grinds, and flowing from trick to trick. It's super satisfying to be listening to the soundtrack while going at fast speeds, going off a half pipe where the music quiets down, then right as you land, the beat drops and the music is blasted back up. Music is a pillar in the game for sure. I mean, as you land tricks, your Tricky meter raises, and once maxed out, you're notified with Run DMC's It's Tricky playing and allowing you to do your character's uber move.
Time to get tricky.
The only real story that the game has is told in the character bios of each character, or in between races. There's nothing of real substance or plot here, but it's more of a here's person 1 saying a line to person 2, then back to the gameplay. As you snowboard, you can use your right analog stick to swipe at other boarders right by you, and if you knock someone over, it'll max out your Tricky bar, but will lower that character's relationship with yours. This means that those racers will be more aggressive toward you, and in those lines spoken back and forth, those racers might be a bit more snarky in what they have to say.
Gosh, honey, let it go already!
When racing in the game, you basically gotta go down the same track 3 times. And if you don't place in at least bronze in the 3rd race, then you gotta do it all over again. However, I did notice that as I got better in the game, no matter where your placement is in the race, you can always make it to 1st, but that's probably due to the overly generous rubber banding. I love my time with SSX Tricky. There's so much personality in the game, and there's so much fun to be had. I always remember hearing and seeing this game as a kid, but never actually playing it, so I'm glad I got to beat it 24 years later from its original release in 2001. R4 Ridge Racer Type 4 is such a time capsule of what I imagined virtual 90s street racing in Japan was like. You have some funky bass lines playing in your car's subwoofers, racing down highways with a cigarette resting between your fingers. These blocky, low-poly PS1 graphics to me never get old, and I think aged really well while looking great. I mean, check out these comet tails on the rear lights of the cars when you enter tunnels or just drive at night. It's so cool. I beat the game with a Negicon controller, which by itself was just such a fun experience. If you don't know what it is, you twist this controller left or right and your car turns that direction in game. It took a bit of learning to rewire your brain to turn because instinctually and because of modern controls in gaming, you want to turn the controller like it has gyro controls, but once you play a few races, it's just like, I can't fathom why this controller was not continued past the PS2. It is the perfect in-between from a racing wheel and a regular controller. This controller alone is just incredible and so much fun to use. It will now be my default of playing any and all racing games in the PS1 and PS2 era. Please, you have to pick one up. Anyway, for Ridge Racer Type 4, I'm not really sure where to start. It has a story mode, well, actually 4 of them in the Grand Prix mode. In there, you pick up 1 of 4 different teams, and then are interjected with some talking and lore in between each race. If you perform well and finish in 2nd or 1st in each race, you'll be rewarded with new cars to use, but if you don't, you'll be stuck using the same old car before, but at least they tune it up, increasing your max speed. I remember beating the first story arc for one team, thinking it was awesome, and then being bummed that there wasn't more. I pressed a new game, wanting to do it again, and to my surprise, each team that you pick has an entirely different story, albeit under the same narrative umbrella. Granted, the gameplay of each Grand Prix is the exact same. You go through the same 8 races, and hopefully win. Each one is technically separated too by difficulty from easy all the way up to expert, but man, for one of the stories, I actually did not expect it to hit me that hard in my feels. At the end of the day, Ridge Racer Type 4 is an arcade racing game. I didn't expect to feel genuine sadness when I expected just speed. Relating to the 4 stories, the other stories outside the one I was talking about before with the Japanese team Shinji are pretty middling to boring, to be honest. But I mean, they could have just shipped 1 story and called it, but since we got 4, I'm not going to complain too much about that. The music in the game has some all-timer tracks. I've been bumping my head for basically the entire game and added a bunch of soundtracks to my playlist. Although I played the greats when it comes to racing games like Burnout 3, Forza 5, Gran Turismo 3, etc., my knowledge and experience on racing games isn't that much, so I'm really stoked to be adding this to my brain library of racing games. It's definitely up there with one of my favorites, and I ordered Ridge Racer 5 for the PS2 to play eventually as well. And this Negicon controller, man, absolutely has fired up my drive, no pun intended, to play other racing games too of this era and caliber that I missed out on. Castlevania Portrait of Ruin has the most hard-looking main menu I've seen out of any game. This is more of the same from the previous DS Castlevania game, Dawn of Sorrow, but that's not a bad thing, since its source material is just so good. Instead of going through a gigantic castle, this game's castle, while being much smaller, acts as a hub like Mario 64. And then, much like Mario 64, you jump through paintings to enter different levels. There are 2 main characters you could play as and swap out at any point. Each player has their own specific abilities, weapons, armor, and more. You can use each other to solve puzzles throughout the game, enact powerful dual crush abilities, and both appear during cutscenes and act as main protagonists. The core gameplay is the same as before, but with this new partner system. The game still has that feeling of, oh fuck, my health is low and the most recent save point is so far back, and then desperately but carefully checking each room to eventually get that huge sigh of relief when you do reach that sweet save point. This is the case because if you die, you gotta go all the way back to the last place you saved in. There are no checkpoints.
Fuck.
After beating the game, I'd say that the overall castle the game takes place in is much smaller compared to other Castlevania games, which could be both a good and bad thing depending on what you want. Some of these castles in other games tend to be larger and a bit more ambiguous on where to go next, and with a smaller castle here, the game has become a lot more linear, making it pretty easy to distinguish where to go next. I'm sure some players didn't like that, but for me, I didn't really care either way because the game's core gameplay loop was just so much fun. I loved going through the game, unlocking abilities and weapons, and equipping them all to see what performs best for my playstyle. There's so many different builds you can do with this system. You'll find a few reused enemies from Dawn of Sorrow copy-pasted here, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but there are so many new enemy types that I think it can get a pass. The levels you go through here are visually distinct and have some great design on them. For example, the carnival level. You go in, and depending on where you are on a circular map, the enemies and platforms are rotated to the map's orientation, which I thought was really cool. So for example, if you're on the left side of the map, the entire world is flipped to the left. Late game though, you do revisit two, quote, new versions of old paintings, and I do wish that those were new original maps instead of going to a changed version of what we already played before. In classic Castlevania fashion, Portrait of Ruin has some really cool bosses, although I think I like the bosses in Dawn of Sorrow just a bit more. All in all, not really sure what else to say besides this is a really great Castlevania game and definitely an all-timer. I'm really excited to play the final Castlevania DS game, Order of Ecclesia 2, down the line.
All they do is eat, and eat, and eat, growing in number. Just like you good red, white, and blue Americans.
Dead Rising is considered a classic of the Xbox 360 era, a must-play time capsule of a game from 2006. You play as Frank West, freelance journalist who rents a helicopter ride to head to a mall where an isolated zombie outbreak has popped up. The game's main premise is that you only have 72 hours to go through the mall, take pictures of zombies, points of interest, psychopaths you meet, along with uncovering the overarching story as to what exactly is going on.
This is my most violent shot. Check it out.
While the premise and the theme is pretty cool, I feel like the game is actually pretty outdated playing its brand new re-release. Sure, it looks great and it's a pretty great remaster as far as I could tell, but mechanically I think it's definitely a product of its time. While I did beat it, it did have plenty of frustrating moments. For example, when heading to my next destination, I found myself on low health. So I head to a food vendor in the mall just to find out that there's no food there but all cooking oil that I can't actually drink or use to heal. I could try to look for another food place, but that's all the way across the mall, and I've already backtracked enough to get to this point. So I say, okay, my destination is at this part of the mall right next to the supermarket. Maybe I could head in before the mission starts. Once I get there with my 2 blocks of health remaining, I head to the supermarket and a cutscene occurs right before, enabling a boss fight starting my mission. During it, I'm like, alright, I'll just go to the supermarket, heal up, and then go back. But then when I enter the supermarket, another cutscene triggers and the boss just leaves and gives me a game over. So the best course of action was to do one of two things. I could either 1, backtrack all the way across the entire mall to get more food, then backtrack all the way back, or I could just beat the boss without taking any damage. So I did the latter. There's also a moment early on where your walkie-talkie, one of your buddies, tells you that there are survivors nearby that you can rescue. So I do that, and then I head to the main courtyard park area of the mall on my way to drop the survivors back at the warehouse. And then I hear this. Oh fuck. There are 3 prisoners driving around a car blasting this hilarious rap song with a mounted machine gun on the back gunning down all of my survivors. There were no hints or foreshadowing that this would happen, so the only way to know about this and rescue those survivors is to either ignore the main quest so it doesn't actually trigger, or just know about that beforehand. So from then on I said fuck it, I'm not gonna rescue any survivors and I'm gonna be essentially punished for it. But alright, frustrating bits aside, the game's premise, let's talk about that real quick, is actually really cool and unique. I haven't seen anything else do something like it. It's set in a mall where you can go from kiosk to store to warehouse, picking up anything you see and use as a weapon, so that's really cool. Hell, even some stores you can just walk in and equip the clothes right off the racks. You can go to like a kid's store and equip like a kid's shirt or whatever, and it looks ridiculous. It's fucking awesome. It's hilarious.
Good.
The The game is super over the top and does not take itself too seriously. Obviously, the psychopaths and bosses you meet on the way emphasize this. So for example, that supermarket I was talking about earlier, you fight the owner of that supermarket whose main weapon is a shopping cart that's covered with like knives and other pointy items that he swings around. It's really funny. I really do like how you have a limited amount of slots to carry items. Like, do you carry all weapons, or maybe do you sacrifice some offense to carry some healing items instead? Or maybe do you take a slot to hold like a magazine that boosts the overall durability of all your home repair items, for example. Dead Rising may be an all-time classic for some, and back in 2006, I knew how awesome and experimental the game was, but after playing it in 2025, yeah, sure, I could see and understand some really cool ideas that the game has, but when I found myself rolling credits, I was kind of thankful that it was over. But then fast forward a few weeks after I beat the game, I saw a video on my feed about someone mentioning how the game was actually heavily censored, and so much was changed from the original. So then I was conflicted. I'm like, alright, maybe it is worth playing the original Dead Rising on the Xbox 360 at some point. So maybe I'll do that down the line.
You gotta go out there and take even better pictures than the ones I just showed you. You think you can handle that, huh?
Yeah.
I've never played a game like Dredge before. For those unaware, think Legend of Zelda Wind Waker boat gameplay combined with Pokemon-style collecting, plus a ton of mysteries, constant discovery, and a Lovecraftian twist. On the surface, it's a fishing game, but deep beneath the waters lies a light horror experience. You'll discover and catch different species of aquatic life to add to your encyclopedia, while also fishing up twisted, Cthulhu-like variations of those fish. As you venture out, you'll explore islands and encounter castaways, meet town residents, cultists, and mysterious beings. The world, fish, and NPCs you encounter too change depending on the time of day. In Dredge, you'll complete tasks to earn ship upgrades like increased cargo space, new fishing equipment for different biomes, better lights to see at night, and otherworldly abilities to help you explore. The horror element in Dredge emerges from random encounters, which I won't spoil, and an in-game sanity system. Stay out alone at night too long and your sanity drops, triggering events from crow attacks that steal your precious fish to being chased by massive unnatural shapes in the water. I love the discovery the game offers. It does some really cool things, like when it's late at night and you're fishing, you might see what looks like another tugboat out on the water. So you might head over there to greet them, only to discover that it's a gigantic anglerfish whose light source mimics the same boat you occupy. There are many moments like this in the game. Even the ending, without spoiling, was an unexpected surprise and really tied the whole game together. If I had a recommendation for new players picking up Dredge, it would be just to constantly explore. Don't dwell in the same place too long, especially if you're stuck in a quest. In my experience, it's best to distract yourself and come back later. Otherwise, Dredge is a unique and great idea executed very well. I definitely plan to play the DLC that's out for the game, and I'm really hoping that perhaps one day we can get a sequel. I cannot believe how good Half-Life 2 looks with this RTX demo. It only has 2 missions to go through, but man, just what an amazing look to the game. Completing this short 2-hour demo made me want to replay every Valve game ever. I'm really excited to see what comes out of this project too. I know they remade models specifically for this, and since Source games often reuse assets across titles, maybe this could open the door for RTX demos for Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and 2, or maybe even Left 4 Dead. How shadows look, how smoke in the air diffuses light, how reflections reflect off tiles looks incredible. I kept pausing to look at scenes, props, and enemies in different lights. I mean, look at the light coming off this Combine's mask, reflecting off the tile. How sick is that? Sure, it doesn't have the most stable frame rates ever, but as a tech demo, if they could buff out some performance issues when they do eventually release the full version of Half-Life 2 RTX, it's gonna be something really amazing. In 2006, I played Oblivion for the first time, exploring its vast open world, getting immersed in its stories, and getting lost in its forests. At the time, there was nothing like it. Full freedom to go wherever you want and do whatever you want. Will you be the good guy, solving the issues of quest givers, not killing or stealing from innocent civilians, or take on an evil route, killing everybody you see while looting their corpses, lining your pockets with gold? Maybe join the Mages Guild and create your own spells. Will you choose to be a warrior, equipping large clubs, or maybe just do what we all end up doing and just play the route of a stealth archer? It's been a long time since I've felt that pure, unadulterated joy being so totally in a game that you want to explore everywhere, try every playstyle out, and do everything. That's how I felt for the first time in a long time with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I want to drive home the fact that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which I'll call KCD2 going forward, has 0 fantasy elements in the game. No floating islands, no spells, no goblins, nothing like that. I think it's important to mention this because to achieve this level of immersion, fun gameplay, deep mechanics, and more without relying on fantastical elements is really impressive. Sure, crossbows take 10 seconds to reload, combat is slow and methodical, and you might even have to do your laundry, but with the game set in real-world locations and grounded in historical events, granted with some creative liberties taken, I can't say that I've played any game like this before. I was so hooked on KCD2 that I ended up rolling credits after playing for about 60 hours in the span of 1 week. I've never played the first KCD game, but from what I heard, this game's events actually take place after a couple days of travel at the end of the first game. You play as Henry of Skalitz, a commoner, son of a blacksmith whose village is burned down and parents are killed. Along with you, your friend Hans of Capon, a noble and social hierarchy superior to you. As KCD2 is an open-world RPG, after an introduction, you'll be set off to explore the world and do whatever you want. The world of KCD2 is large, but not overly so like in other modern games. You won't be going to any lava areas, deserts, tundras, or oceans. The entirety of the game takes place similar to modern-day Central Europe with vast forests, fields, and towns, but in medieval Bohemia, or rather modern-day Czech Republic. Man, the game's environments are so fucking beautiful. Throughout my 60 hours, I was never bored of being in essentially the same biome. How these forests look and feel is exactly how I imagined Oblivion looking like when I was a kid. Oblivion is probably my favorite RPG of all time, and not to keep talking about it, drawing comparisons between the two, to me, just shows how much I like the game. Even down to the music, it's adventurous with these long hums and strings, reminding me of Jeremy Soul's work in Oblivion and Guild Wars. I mean, even its loading screens are beautiful, man. I want this shit hung up in my living room for everybody to see. I mentioned earlier how KCD2 is unlike any RPG I've played before, and while that's because the game is rooted in historical realism, it has so many interesting systems and mechanics that I haven't seen any other RPG do, let alone any other video game do. There's a stealth system where you can pickpocket from unsuspecting people who carry common items in their back pockets and more valuable stuff like money and keys in their front pocket. And if you don't want to get caught, you should wear darker drab colors to blend in with the shadows, and unequip your armor, chainmail, and other items because they might be too loud when you're sneaking around. There's the multi-layered armor system where to equip certain pieces of gear, you have to be wearing something underneath it to pad it out. There's the unconventional combat system where you are swinging your weapon in a multitude of different directions. There's saving the game itself where, sure, the game gives plenty of autosaves by itself, but to save manually, you have to go to a bed or drink a save your schnapps potion. Out of save potions, well, you can buy them off merchants or make them yourself, and to do so you gotta go out in the wilderness, pick nettle and 2 belladonna, then go to an alchemy bench and pour wine into the cauldron, then add the nettle, let it boil for 2 turns, grind the belladonna, add it to the cauldron and boil for another turn, then grab a vial and pour. I won't get into it like I did alchemy, but you could even blacksmith making your own weapons, hammering down on hot iron in a rhythmic pattern, flipping it and hitting down on the right spot to assure its quality. There's even a system where Henry's cleanliness matters. If you stink too much, people will let you know and not want to be around you.
Oh, what a stench!
God be with you.
You gotta go to Trods and wash off, maybe go to a bathhouse and take a bath, or even do your laundry. Like, I found myself Googling how to do my laundry in KCD2. Like, what game has you doing that? And that's of course not to mention the game's hunger and sleep systems too. You'll be excused for calling KCD2 more of an immersive sim than an RPG, but if the systems weren't fun or interesting, they'd definitely hold it down, but somehow it all ties together perfectly. While KCD2 succeeds in being unique and taking risks, it is a bit slow. In Elden Ring, you're going from boss to boss, attacking shit, taking on monsters, and just generally fighting all the time. In Skyrim, you might have to take down a dragon, or a quest that will send you to recover some magical artifact. Here, you might be moving sacks of flour from inside a building to a cart outside. Maybe you'll take a slow carriage ride with someone who deals with animals in the region, checking up on local farmers' livestock. It's non-traditional and such a refreshing take on the genre, and because of that, it's not going to be for everyone.
And I can't wait to sleep in a proper bed. And some wine!
Oh, fucking hell.
Oh, it's closed.
Sure, the game being open world does have its jank here and there, yet somehow I never experienced one crash, one corrupted save, one stuck quest, one FPS drop. The whole experience was mostly seamless where it mattered, albeit sometimes with characters popping in and out, lighting issues, and some animation problems. KCD2 absolutely has a learning curve. I did find myself in the early game being overburdened by the systems and how they work, and I think the game could do a better job overall explaining some of them. The game provides you with almost board game instruction manual levels of information for each specific system. Even the combat took dozens of fights and dozens of deaths to fully understand and grasp. If you go in sword flailing thinking you could take on a 1v2, let alone a 1v1, you'll be humbled real quick. I think it took me about 8 hours of playing until I finally won my first 1v1 in an actual fight to the death combat scenario. But the more you do tasks, from thieving to horseback riding to swordsmanship to whatever, just being alive, you'll level up those stats and earn perk points, unlocking new abilities, buffs, and more. I found myself getting my ass handed to me in the early game, but through leveling up and spending my time with the game, I found myself to be a strong, capable knight, relying on everything I had learned on the way to help me succeed all the way to the end. The characters you meet along the way each are really well written, with unique personalities and backstories. I played Henry as a by day, lawful knight upholding the law and protecting the innocent, but by night, someone who's a bit of a kleptomaniac, breaking into shops, looting everything, and then selling it all the second I got the opportunity. Hans Capen, the person you are sworn to protect, is really funny. He changes and grows throughout the story, despite him insisting he is correct, and overall just a hilarious character. Maybe throughout the story there are one or two characters that weren't really that exciting, but generally everybody you meet overall was really memorable, and even the villains are really great.
When's the last time you bathed?
At Christmas? Washing more would be a vanity.
Be that as it may, my nose would surely appreciate it.
While I loved the story and it did wrap up nicely, I felt that when I rolled credits there were a couple of loose ends. I wondered what happened to certain characters. It felt like toward the end they just kind of dropped off the face of the earth, but it seems like these questions will be answered in future DLC or in the game's inevitable sequel. All in all, KCD2 is refreshingly different. Its developer's Warhorse has chosen not to play it safe to make another generic 70 Metacritic RPG that sits on the shelf of your local Walmart, but dares to try differently. While fantasy is my favorite genre, KCD2 doesn't have to hide behind making up magical systems and elements to explain itself. It grounds itself on realism. You have swords, horses, peasants, castles, and that's it. I loved every second of my 60-hour journey through KCD2. Developers Warhorse have a Game of the Year contender here for sure, and sold over 2 million copies of KCD2 in under 2 weeks. And real quick to read the headline of a Games Radar article, quote, days after EA CEO suggests that players crave live service guff, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 boss says that their single-player RPG made all of its money back in 1 day. This smaller AA studio from Prague has catapulted itself into AAA territory, making one of the best, most immersive RPGs I played this year and maybe ever played. And that's again by not congealing to the uniformity and safety of modern games of a genre, but daring and risking to do it different. For a game with zero fantasy elements, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 truly is magic. Ape Escape 1 is, in my opinion, the most quintessentially PS1 looking game ever. Some quick lore, Ape Escape was originally meant to be a tech demo for the first DualShock controller featuring 2 analog sticks. So, how do these analog sticks translate to gameplay? While nowadays the right analog stick is typically used for camera control, here it's used for your gadgets. Pushing the right stick forward with your sword makes you strike ahead. Using your radar gadget, it scans for monkeys in whatever direction you tilt the stick. And using the Skyflyer, you quickly rotate the stick to lift off into the air. There are so many creative uses for the right analog stick here. It was groundbreaking at the time, though a bit jarring today. But for camera control, you just gotta simply press the bumper to center your view. Presentation-wise, as mentioned, the game epitomizes the PS1 era. Huge polygons, fog limiting visibility to about 30 feet, and unstable frame rates, although it does hit 60 FPS most of the time, albeit when not a lot is going on the screen. The game's soundtrack is incredible, truly a top banger. If you watch gaming videos on YouTube, there's a 99% chance you've heard an Ape Escape song in the background. The music absolutely rips. At its core, Ape Escape is a collectathon platformer. Think Super Mario 64, but instead of stars, you're chasing apes that run around, sometimes wearing sunglasses and shooting at you. You can scan each monkey with your radar to reveal their unique names, stats, and personality descriptions. It's genuinely funny catching each monkey and collecting the hidden Spectre coins that unlock minigames across the 20+ visually distinct stages. I recently beat Ape Escape on the loose in 2024 for PSP, which is essentially a PS1 remake, but comparing them, I think I prefer the PS1 version just because of how PS1 it looks. While the PSP version has better draw distance and updated graphics, there's something special about the PS1 version as an early 3D gaming pioneer. The dual analog sticks on the PS1 versus the PSP single stick made for better movement. While the screen size preference is subjective, I'd rank the PS1 version slightly higher. That said, both versions do offer a similar core experience. The game only has a few traditional bosses, but plenty of puzzle-like encounters that serve as boss battles themselves, like figuring out how to dismount a monkey riding a dinosaur or mammoth so you can catch it. The voice acting is hilariously dated and frankly, not great. Just check out this scene after freeing your mind-controlled buddy Jake.
Jake, are you okay?
Spike? Oh, this is so weird.
Are you okay? Don't you remember anything at all? Have you forgotten about the apes?
Another period-typical feature is the lack of autosaves, which I learned the hard way after losing about 3 hours of progress by turning off my PS1 without saving. Luckily, the gameplay loop is just so fun that after a week's break, I was able to 100% the game, no problem. To truly complete Ape Escape 1 and face the final boss, you'll need to catch every monkey for the true ending. While I'm generally not a fan of games locking their true endings behind 100% completion, here it only took a few hours to catch the remaining monkeys. Though Ape Escape 1's developer Japan studio no longer exists, some of the developers created the excellent Astrobot in 2024, and you can clearly see Ape Escape's DNA in that game and vice versa here. If you have the means and want to try out a series that hasn't had a mainline entry in 20 years, you should definitely give Ape Escape a shot. They say that Kingdom Hearts emanated because a Square Enix producer and a Disney executive happened to share an elevator at the same time. I first played it when it launched on PS2 in 2002, bounced off it, gave it another shot in 2017 when my college roommates were playing it, and still bounced off it. In 2024, I almost quit for the third time. Every attempt ended at the same place, Deep Jungle, the Tarzan level, where I'd get frustrated, lose track of where to go next, and quit. But this time I persevered, and pushing through, the game finally clicked. This is the first time I've ever beaten a Kingdom Hearts game. I rented the first and second game from a Blockbuster way back in the day, always aware of the series' iconic themes, characters, RPG mechanics, and music. Finally finishing the game made me realize how much I actually missed out on. And honestly, I'm kinda pissed that I didn't break through sooner. As a huge Final Fantasy fan, seeing younger alternative versions of the beloved characters in Kingdom Hearts felt a little uncanny at first, which caught me off guard. You see Cloud with his gigantic ass sword looking all edgy and shit, and then boom, it fucking cuts to like Goofy or something. It's definitely an insane crossover game, but it somehow works. The game isn't perfect by any means. I was ready to write it off as a not for me game yet again, but the sheer charm, fun combat, and memorable characters pulled me in all the way to the end.
Looks like I'm headed for the games.
Afraid not.
Why not?
2 words. You guys ain't heroes.
Come on.
I was glad to finally be rewarded with that Danny DeVito I get it gif and beating the game throughout the course of actually like a week. But let's touch on the bad real quick. The movement generally feels pretty stiff, and the lock-on system I found frustrating most of the time. Trying to target an enemy right in front of me but locking onto something behind them is annoying, and I mean you can't even rotate the camera when locked on. But this oversight reminded me that in the PS2 era of gaming, we're still figuring stuff out and learning. While frustrating, sure, I think modern game design has generally fixed problems like these. And dude, fucking Deep Jungle, this Tarzan level might be the worst designed level out of any game I've ever played. There's no clear hints of where to go next, and the constant backtracking between the tent, the vine area, and the treehouse felt like I was stuck in an Escher painting. It's the kind of onboarding that makes you want to quit, and it almost got me again. Thankfully, the combat more than makes up for it. It's fluid, fast, and satisfying. Spells and items are super easy to manage, and everything flows together so well here. No going through menus, just press a couple buttons while fighting, and you're good.
Kid, I got 2 words of advice for you. Attack!
I beat the game on normal difficulty, and it felt like a nearly perfect balanced experience. I died plenty of times, and when in boss fights, I think I died most to a single boss maybe 3 or 4 times. I just learned to play a bit more defensively, and it made a huge difference. Defeating a boss and seeing the slow motion effect, hearing that chime and warping out never got old too. There's this moment toward the last few hours of the game where you're in this room and you have to fight through this gauntlet of waves and waves of enemies without getting a break. Yeah, whoever designed that part, they can fucking go to hell. That sucked, but enemies looked really cool throughout the game visually. They really nailed the art style there too. From the bosses just to the normal mobs you fight, everybody looks really distinct and fits in the world that they're in. Each world you visit draws from a classic Disney film, and the way that they're introduced with a dramatic pan out followed by a little title card I thought was really cool. I think my favorite world for sure was Agrabah, the Aladdin level. It didn't overstay its welcome, and I loved its theme and its verticality. Nearly every song in the game too, super iconic and really good. While playing through the game, I recognized some of them, and I was like, oh shit, I didn't know that originated from this game. My personal favorites, not including, you know, the famous main theme, has got to be the Hollow Bastion battle track. That shit fucking ripped. There's a bunch of cool moments in the game that I wasn't expecting, and as someone who didn't grow up with Disney at all, and having no context for any of these characters except for, you know, general knowledge and other medias and references growing up, made me actually want to go back and watch some of these movies for the first time. But I'm stoked that I finally beat the game, and I'm excited to eventually try Kingdom Hearts 2 or maybe the games in between also.
If we stick together, we're unbeatable. Not even Hercules stands a chance. With these guys beside me, I'm ready for anything.
But that's not exactly what...
Of course. Your friends give you strength. Isn't that right, Phil? The 3 of you together make great heroes. And as a team, I'm sure you can overcome anything.
As someone who's into history, I absolutely love how Ubisoft always does an amazing job with the Assassin's Creed games' historical accuracy. Sure, they take creative liberties, but I think overall, on a historical basis, Shadows knocks it out of the park. There are these little nodes you can scan throughout the game when you visit certain areas that give you a wall of text describing life in Japan at that time at the specific place, or describing what exactly you're looking at and its historical significance. I think in a world where everything needs to be snappy, ADHD, constant action, Ubisoft offering opportunities to learn about history and culture through gameplay I think is really valuable. And not to linger on this, but Ubisoft has a series of games labeled Discovery Tour where they strip out essentially all the gameplay and story in their games and re-release it as a standalone product where you can walk around these beautiful worlds and listen to a curator narrate exactly what's going on around you. As someone who wasn't the best in school due to ADHD, I think any sort of education tied within video games is absolutely worth a shout. Okay, so Shadows is a gorgeous game, absolutely, 100%. The gameplay has been streamlined a bit more since Valhalla, UI and AI I believe to be improved, but I think at the end of the day, it is just another safe Ubisoft game. After about 40 hours of playing, doing side content, trying to beat the story, I did throw in the towel because there is just so much filler that gets in the way. I think if you are new to the AC games, you can pick this up and you'll have an absolute blast. The game is very fun. You'll be unlocking new skills, leveling up, discovering this beautiful world, equipping new weapons. The game itself is a good time, 100% for sure. Now, there's some truly exciting moments in the game's story where you're about to fight a boss or like an epic moment is going on, but instead of traditional Japanese action music in the background, it swaps to a modern beat with those old Japanese instruments inside of it, making it feel kind of like a western, which is a neat surprise. And speaking of music, man, the soundtrack here is actually stellar, for real. The fusion of different cultural styles is really unique and I think enhances the overall experience. Gameplay-wise, you play as one of 2 characters. You have Yasuke, a combat-oriented character wielding huge weapons, plowing through anybody who is unlucky enough to be in your path, and Naoe, a smaller, more stealth-focused character. In layman's terms, you got the samurai or a ninja. Gameplay-wise, I focused on Naoe, the ninja, because I found her kit to just be a little bit more fun, picking off enemies, being stealthy, and dare I say, you actually do feel like a ninja here. Like I said before, I was 40 hours in before throwing the towel and writing this, and I think I absolutely will go back and beat it, but I just wish in the future they would streamline the story more and cut out all this unnecessary filler. And I truly do want to see how these character arcs with these protagonists end, but man, it's just really hard to get there. There are peaks and valleys of really exciting moments in the game where it hooks you and you're excited to see what happens next, to then just hit a wall of 10 hours of boring characters and cutscenes. Well, yeah, AC Shadows is absolutely a fun game, but I can't help but think about Assassin's Creed 2, for example, where you have all these fun and well-written characters all contained into a streamlined 18-hour story. Why can't we start doing that again, or why can't we have that here? Then Ubisoft doesn't even need to get rid of all the side content, just leave it in for those that want more, but make the story itself a bit more focused. Out of nowhere came Boltgun Words of Vengeance, a very short game where you go through 3 levels from Boltgun and type out prompts on your keyboard to take down your foes. These prompts you see on screen when typed in time blow up explosive barrels, slash enemies with your chainsword, and fire off your gun to kill those dirty heretics. Took me about 20 minutes to beat the game, whose last screen, to my surprise, is a prompt to wishlist Boltgun 2 on Steam. While the game itself isn't really something to write home about, I think that this is such a fun and clever way to get people interested in your next game. Its awareness campaign worked too, because I had no idea Boltgun 2 was a thing, and now I've read over its Steam page and wishlisted it. This is really cool. If you got 20 minutes, go for it. One of the most anticipated games of the decade came out this year, Hollow Knight Silksong. Much like its predecessor, it's a beautifully drawn Metroidvania where you play as a bug going to kill off other bugs, earning upgrades and abilities to unlock new areas. Typical Metroidvania stuff, but with a gorgeous art style. Without spoiling, some of the bosses in Silksong are really spectacular, and they're gonna stick out in my memory. There's lots to do here with such a huge world, and some of my main issues with Hollow Knight 1, mainly being on how easy it is to get lost, has been addressed here, making it pretty easy to know where to go next. However, there are some absolutely insane game design choices here, and pacing here that I think just deflated my overall experience. Act 1 was so strong and exciting, but by the end of Act 2, I just wanted it to be over. To unlock fast travel and save points in Silksong, they now cost rosary beads, a currency that enemies drop, but like Souls games, if you die twice without recovering them, they're gone for good. It's especially frustrating when after a long arduous trek, exploring a new place and finding a bench for you to save at just to not have enough beads to do so. I'm not sure what the point of that was. It seems like punishing the player and adding artificial difficulty for no reason. Additionally, when I saw reviews for the game, people were complaining about runbacks, another outdated game design philosophy in my opinion. At first I didn't mind it, but man, toward the end of the game there are just some absolutely frustrating ones. But hey, with that said, there are dozens of hours of content here. There's plenty of side quests, loads and loads of secrets to discover. There's just so much fun to be had here. I'm sure as time goes on, they'll patch out some of the community shared issues about having better quality of life, but I think this is going to be an all-timer just like the first. Until then, however, I couldn't help but end up feeling a lasting sense of frustration and anger, when it should have been awe and satisfaction. Late in September, I was between playing Silksong and Borderlands 4. While both excellent games, something about platforming and simple but fun gameplay systems made me think about Mega Man for the NES. A few years ago, I played Mega Man 2, but never actually played the first one, and beat it in about 2 days of on and off play. There's something I've gone to appreciate and like about these simpler games. Not to say that simple is a bad thing, but to appreciate older games where gaming hasn't been air quotes solved yet. All you need is 2 buttons to jump and shoot. It's why I love Dragon Quest 1 so much, or Dragon Warrior in the US. It's why I love Defenders of Oasis for the Game Gear. It's why I love Super Mario Bros. And now Mega Man. Comparatively to modern gaming, Mega Man 1 is straightforward, short, and mostly safe. You have 7 stages to go through, each with a boss at the end. The levels are relatively short and absolutely whooped my ass the first time playing through each one. The last stage in the game is a brutal gauntlet of bosses, traps, and platforming, which definitely did have some frustrating parts. I did find that Mega Man 1 wasn't overly punishing. There are plenty of checkpoint areas if you die, and if you do game over, you're brought back to the beginning of that world, which I appreciated since game overs in this era of gaming usually meant that the game would reset and you'd have to start over from scratch. When you defeat a boss, you gain their power, and these powers allow you to shoot out fireballs, electricity, or metal blades, which some enemies and bosses are weak to. And sure, the game has some weird design choices, like not being able to progress in the last level because you needed to pick up what looked like an inconsequential item halfway through a different stage, but I digress. It can be forgiven because it was made in 1987. In the end, Mega Man 1, I'm sure at the time was groundbreaking, and it was fun to play through and experience the platforming genre in its infancy. I have played Mega Man 2, but I never cleared that last level. But now that I beat this, I am excited to one day take on that beast, which I do hear is the best in the series. I managed to complete Hollow Knight Silksong right as Borderlands 4 came out, and I think it was the perfect palate cleanser. I've been playing and completing each Borderlands game since its original release. I remember getting Borderlands for the Xbox 360 on my birthday in 2009. While Borderlands 1 and 2 are incredible games, I enjoyed 3 but felt like it missed some of the marks, not really adapting or changing its game design principles. However, with Borderlands 4, Gearbox took some risks that have absolutely planted themselves with a series all-timer. For those unaware, Borderlands is a first first-person RPG where you can play from one of a few different vault hunters, each equipped with their own unique powers, strengths, and weaknesses. As tradition with my first game, I cleared Borderlands 4 as the Siren, a powerful spell slinger who can conjure aberrations of themselves to gun down or smack enemies. And if I hit enemies with my melee attack, they would become cursed, taking increased damage. The gameplay feel has been built upon as well, now with double jumps, increasing movement fluidity, new healing equipment syringes that you could use on the fly to get back into the fight, and rocket launchers and grenades are now slotted in their own equipment slot rather than being separate. Speaking of weapons and equipment, the gameplay loop here is excellent. Every piece of equipment dropped by enemies is totally random. You're constantly rotating your kit and theory crafting on what works rather than sticking to a specific set of guns. Yeah, the game runs like shit on PC, but the gameplay loop is just so much fun that it almost makes up for it. Borderlands 4 takes the jump into an open world while the previous games had isolated levels separated by loading screens. I think I prefer that because the developers had to hone in on smaller, more contained areas versus huge open spaces. I think the translation here was done pretty well though. Some of these set pieces look amazing. I couldn't help but stop and take it all in. When you're all set and done with the campaign in Borderlands, which took me about 40 hours of taking my time and doing side quests, for some, that is when the real game opens up. Like reaching max level in an MMORPG, you are awarded with new ways to play the game along with new systems. There are weekly challenges, new difficulties like Ultimate Vault Hunter, an unlimited leveling system for your Vault Hunter, and more. While I don't think I'm up for the end game grind that much, I will absolutely be coming back to see what new content drops and expansions Gearbox is going to release. So, give it a shot. Earlier this year, some friends and I attended Austin Clasted Game Fest, a convention with a bunch of vendors selling off their retro games and other gaming paraphernalia. I ended up picking up a ton of games for some pretty decent prices, but one game I picked up while sorting through some PS2 games was Death by Degrees, a Tekken spin-off featuring one of its main characters and its own unique story. I know about Tekken, but always grew up more of a Soul Calibur guy, so while I recognized some characters, I wasn't familiar with the series and its lore. With all my PS2 games I buy, I don't look at reviews or anything online. I judge it all 100% on face value as if I'm in a pre-internet era. If something looks even remotely fun or interesting, I'll pick it up. Anyway, so Death by Degrees is a spin-off, non-canon game from the Tekken universe. You play as Nina Williams, who is kind of a secret agent character smacking and shooting your way through enemies to thwart the bad guys' plans. I appreciate a good spin-off game, and especially appreciate a game that tries out new things. For example, here all attacks used are used with your right analog stick. Swinging it in a direction of your enemies will make you attack in that direction. Flick the left analog stick quickly in a direction and you'll jump over enemies, dodge out of the way, and quickly dash. While it sounds cool on paper, and though I did have a ton of fun with the game to be fair, when you take the analog stick out of the game, which is normally meant for the camera, you run into consistent issues of not being able to see, camera auto-adjusting, losing focus and direction of where you are, and you'll find yourself generally fighting the camera along with your enemies. As you play, you'll find items, solve puzzles, level up, and spend your skill points on new moves to try out. Somewhat like Resident Evil, you'll be in a large area and need to navigate through solving puzzles, unlocking keys, and other items to allow you to access other areas. Stuff like that. But man, there is just so much backtracking here. I was committed though to see the game through to the end because of how bold its ideas were and its inspirations. Every single action you do in this game has a loading screen. If you open up your menu, it takes time to load. If you enter a new room, you'll get a loading screen. Some rooms have loading screens within the zones themselves. If you get a cutscene, you'll get a loading screen to load that cutscene, and then another loading screen when that cutscene is all over. And yeah, sure, I mean, loading screens do exist for sure, but dude, each loading screen here is like a minimum of 10 seconds. It really does add up. Maybe I'm exaggerating that time, but I kid you not when I say when I cleared credits with about 12 hours of playtime, I swear half of that has to be sitting in these loading screens. And if you die, you're not going to respawn right at the area you were in. You have to go all the way back to your last save point and go through all those loading screens accompanied with that. It did make me think though, I wonder if this game is worth playing on a emulator rather than hardware, because you could at least have save states and you could actually speed up those loading screens themselves in the emulator. What's awesome though is that when you complete the game, you're rewarded with a challenge mode where you can take on combat challenges, sniper challenges, or drone challenges, all totaling in over 130 new missions to compete in. You can go through the game as another character you'll unlock, you'll get new difficulty settings if you want to do it again, but with that said, I gotta applaud the developers for trying something new, because yeah, it does work. I just think perhaps maybe they were ahead of their time. You know, despite everything, I'm glad I saw it to the end and beat Death by Degrees. If this came out today with 0 loading screens, camera fixes, and other quality of life improvements, I think it could maybe be a, you know, cult classic, but it'll absolutely be a better game because of that. But in the end, it succeeded because it made me a Tekken fan and made me try out my first Tekken game, Tekken 3, which I'll talk about right now. You know, I think I could get way more into fighting games when I have context. I know Death by Degrees barely is any context because the story is non-canon, but it was enough for me to try out 3, and the main character from Death by Degrees is in this game. With the exception of fighting games that are out right now at this second, I've really had a great time going through old fighting games solo, and for me, it's all about that solo experience. Fighting games have unlimited potential for fun, absolutely. I bet sitting down with anyone and playing really any fighting game will always be a great time. But I think it's especially fun to go back and check out the games after the fact and seeing what single player content it has to offer. Is there a story mode? Is there stuff to unlock? How many modes are there? Is it fun? How much mileage will I have X years later just as a solo player? After playing through Tekken 3 multiple times, I ended up unlocking every single character except for one, and with 23 characters in total for a PS1 game, that seems like a pretty killer roster to me. New characters and a couple modes is what's up for grabs here unlockable wise. Beat the arcade mode to unlock a new fighter. At the end of the arcade mode, you'll be treated with a sick FMV cutscene briefly touching on that character's lore. I think the fighters here look really good, and on the PS1, their models and level of detail is really impressive. I love when a fighting game has a crazy roster. Like here we have a bear guy and a wooden dummy to play as who has random weapons each time. We have a literal demon thing, and each character is just totally unique in their visuals. Not only that, but the game feels so good to play. I ended up leaning back, playing each mode and watching Tekken lore on my other monitor to get me in. And now I'm excited to say that I'm a Tekken fan, and I'm really excited too to try out other games in the series. Well, on a quick detour while waiting for Ghost of Yotei to arrive, I played Exit 8, a really short and simple horror game on Steam that was just $4. The game's entire premise is actually pretty clever. It's like Horror I Spy. You walk down this endless hallway in a subway in Japan, then as you go, you closely examine your surroundings. And if anything looks out of place, you gotta nope out of there and just turn back. But if it looks good, you just keep continuing forward. Do this 8 times and win. That's it. There are quite a few different anomalies that you get to see, with some being more obvious than others. Once you get enough reps going down this hallway, you'll get more and more familiar with what looks right and what looks out of place. You kind of do this mental checklist in your brain as you examine your surroundings. Once you beat the game, it tells you how many anomalies you haven't seen and will just show you them back to back, but overall Exit 8 was just a really cool and unique experience. I recommend it if you want to try something a little bit different, especially for a game that was just $4. For those who don't know, the Sly Cooper series has always held a pivotal role in my childhood. I remember renting Sly Cooper 1 from Blockbuster way back in 2002 or 2003, playing it at my buddy's house, and I specifically have this memory of it being the last game I played in my childhood apartment before moving into our first house. I remember playing it on my CRT as the movers were helping my parents box stuff up, and one of the guys asked me, "What are you playing?" And I, a little embarrassed to be honest, handed him the box to look at, and he said, "Oh, cool." Sly 3 is the last mainline entry in the Sly Cooper series. Sure, there's Sly Cooper Thieves in Time After, which I do want to get to at some point, but when it comes to the original PS2 trilogy, this is the last one. I still think this series is incredible and a must play. The characters are all so well written and so likable. The story is good, although maybe not as good as the second, with just super memorable missions, levels, and characters. This is everything you would want in a video game, and especially a mascot-based platformer. Now, this isn't spoilers because it happens in the first 10 minutes of the game, but I distinctly remember playing this as a kid and getting through the intro segment where it's implied that the main character Sly Cooper dies, and just being so totally mind blown. No way you could kill a main character in the first 10 minutes. You can't do that, no way. Each different world you visit certainly feels larger and more fleshed out than the seconds. From the first world, or level rather, taking place in Venice to later on in Holland, each world is memorable in its own right and introduces new thematic objectives in the missions mines constantly. I was a bit bummed that they got rid of the clue bottles hidden in each world. As a result, there was really zero reason to explore, you just aren't incentivized to do it. Just like in 2, the game has basically GTA style missions, going from place to place, but there's so much mission variety and just so many minigames per level that it just never gets stale. One of my favorite missions ever early on is you singing opera against the first world's big bad. It really is something that stuck with me as a kid, and I just still think about this from time to time. One of my favorite worlds is the pirate level a little bit late in the game, where you take helm of a pirate ship, sailing across a new map, landing on islands, reading clues, and solving mysteries to uncover treasure. It absolutely took a ton of inspiration from the excellent Sid Meier's Pirates 2, just what a great world. And just want to mention one more thing I thought was cool. I remember that there are these paintings in the game, and hidden each painting itself is a 3-digit code that's the combination to unlock a safe or whatever. And then once you have the code, you have to unlock the safe yourself. So you have to turn the dial, and your controller vibrates right when you're just on the number before having to turn to the next one. It sounds simple, yeah, your controller vibrates when you're cracking open a safe, but in the game it just correlates so well. I do remember being just totally stuck on these as a kid, having to ask my father for help looking for the codes in the paintings, but as an adult it was just a kind of a breeze. I just thought those puzzles were a really clever highlight. I'm not saying Grand Theft Auto 5 copied Sly Cooper 3, but both games got 3 main protagonists to play. I'm joking mainly, but one thing I wanted to bring up was that in Sly Cooper 2 it had a really poor economy system where everything felt just really overpriced. Here this all seems to be fixed with much more affordable upgrades and quality of life improvements, like when you're pickpocketing, big items get sold immediately, or even allowing you to pickpocket as Murray or Bentley. I especially liked Murray's pickpocket animation where he just grabs hold of someone and shakes him over his head with all of their money just falling out of their pockets. This game has so much personality. I had a bunch of issues with lag on the PlayStation 3 HD version, dropping frame rates and audio issues where music would skip and repeat, background effects being just way too loud compared to voices. The audio absolutely needs some equalizing. I do wonder if this game is an overall better experience on the PS2 instead. When the game did reach its conclusion, I felt that it did end a little bit too quickly and was a bit anticlimactic. I expected this huge hooray moment with the whole gang together talking to each other about this huge life-changing experience they just had, but everyone just kind of just dips and goes back to their own lives. It does set up for a 4th game, which in hindsight is a little strange because the 4th game has different developers, but I wonder if Sucker Punch originally planned to make another one. I love Sly Cooper. It's one of my favorite series of all time, and it holds a special place in my heart. Sure, some part of me wishes there was more, but maybe it's a good thing that Sucker Punch moved on. I mean, after all, they would make the really popular Infamous series and my game of the year for 2020, Ghost of Tsushima. The game that I was most looking forward to this year was Ghost of Yotei. Their previous game, Ghost of Tsushima, was my game of the year for 2020 and the first PS4 game I ever platinumed. That game was such a fun spin on the open world genre, incredible swordplay, and just such fun gameplay overall. I sang its praises and will continue to gush over how much fun the game is and its incredible pacing. Now, while I think Ghost of Yotei is such a good game and certainly very fun, I think it did drop the ball on many things that made Ghost of Tsushima such a standout game. Ghost of Yotei adds some stuff to the formula, like being able to grab and hunt down bounties found on bounty boards in local towns and villages. You can pick up and throw dropped weapons from enemies to chuck back at them. Charms you get are upgradable. You could use your spyglass to spot and flag places of interest on your map. While the last one there might dull the natural exploration of the game, each one is a welcome addition. Even with new weapons like your musket or the Odachi, a gigantic sword made to break through enemy defenses and take down big brute enemies, I felt like this was an overall watered down experience of the previous game. Ghost of Yotei is an unbelievably unreal looking game. I've stopped so many times to look around and just take it all in. The use of color and fauna makes so many set pieces absolutely insane to look at. You gotta play the game and see for yourself, it's nuts. However, I found that the main character Atsu's overall story and the characters you meet have been pretty dull and bland. There isn't a Mongol invasion here, but instead it's more of a revenge story where your family is cut down by a band of enemies named the Yotei 6, and it's your job to take them all down down and avenge those you lost. In Ghost of Tsushima, the main character Jin Sakai starts honorable, and over the course of the game becomes more and more dishonorable in both his actions and how you play the game. Throughout your journey, new abilities and gameplay elements are peppered in while reflecting on his descent to dishonor and doing it his way. Without spoiling, there's a segment in the game where his inner turmoil unlocks this ability that when you see for the first time, it'll stop you in your tracks, like, oh fuck, I can't believe he just did this. Here, you have that ability, but it's unlocked randomly with no pomp and circumstance. You're just in a mission and boom, you can now do this thing. Felt like playing throughout the game, none of the armor or charms you unlock really altered the gameplay too significantly and made me want to change up my build. In the previous game, I was constantly getting new armor and charms and swapping them out on the fly to try out new builds, but here I ended up clearing the game with one of the first armor sets that you unlock. I don't know if this is because of potential gameplay balancing issues that the previous game had, but at this point each charm and armor type impacts gameplay in such a minor way that I wonder just why even include them at all. Well, the story I didn't care for, you are here for the gameplay. The gameplay feels so damn good, and the sound design really emphasizes each swing of your katana, hearing the sword swing out and clash upon your opponent's metal. I think if you haven't played that many open world RPGs, you will absolutely still have so much fun here, and I did have fun, make no mistake. I wonder if my thoughts were soured because I spent 40 hours here in Yotei, but an additional 40 hours in Assassin's Creed Shadows early in the year, a game that does mostly the same thing here, but has significantly more padding and worse gameplay. I think I was just hoping for more iteration over such a strong previous entry. I'm still gonna come back and play the game's future DLC when it comes out, absolutely, and I'll still continue being a fan of Sucker Punch and the Ghost series, but here I wonder if the bar was set so high by Ghost of Tsushima that it was just impossible to overcome. If you have the opportunity, you need to play Peak with your friends. Developed by just 4 people and as a result of a game jam that was later iterated on, Peak is a game where it's all about climbing randomly generated mountains to reach, get this, its peak. It uses the classic Breath of the Wild climbing mechanics to have you scale mountains, icy tundras, and fiery volcanoes. The game encourages you to use in-game voice chat, which also adds so much to it. Because of its proximity chat, it opens up so many funny moments between your buds where maybe you're scaling up and your buddy slips and you hear them scream all the way down.
Oh! Somebody grab me!
Oh my god. Ah! I can just hear an echo all the way down.
You fucking failed me!
Or when you're in a cave and your voice echoes across the rocks. And also when maybe you're alone and you're yelling to see if your buddies can help find you.
There's a giant. He died a long time ago, but find him.
There we go. We're good. Oh no!
Each run has random drops scattered throughout the map. You'll be climbing trees to get fruit to eat so you don't starve, opening up suitcases to get tools to help escalate yourself upwards, and more.
Oh my god!
That shot.
Thanks, man.
When you do finally reach the peak, the game adds further challenges, making each run more stressful but also rewarding. But man, when we did finally reach that peak, we wanted to immediately jump in again and do it all over. Really excited for the future of this game, as it's definitely on a rotation.
Can't believe that I was one shit rope jump away from fucking peaking.
Now, what if I told you that one of the deepest stories from a game I played this year wasn't from a AAA developer, it wasn't even from a game made in 2025, but was a silly fighter pilot airplane game released 26 years ago in 1999. From what I know, Ace Combat 3 Electrosphere was released in the States, but for whatever reason they totally gutted its story from its original Japanese release. Luckily, there's a pretty great fan translation, which is what I played here. As a huge Ace Combat fan, normally when I think of these games, I think of insane guitar riffs, flying at Mach speeds, blasting my targets with missiles, and an epic story about the struggles of war. Here in Ace Combat 3 Electrosphere is something completely different. The story is much darker, more similar to the likes of maybe Soma. The series' sick guitar riffs are replaced with calm electrical hums. There's a reason for all of this, of course, and it's all on purpose. To give an insanely light idea of the story, it follows along the lines generally of this. What if companies eclipsed the GDP and the power of specific countries and essentially became too powerful, replacing the governments of the countries themselves? While the game was made in 1999, it's absolutely punching above its weight, because, I mean, Apple, Walmart, Amazon, etc. all have a larger market cap than nearly all countries in the world. Let's say any of these companies were to become a country, for example, they would be in the top 10 GDP out of every country in the world. So yeah, really interesting and dystopian premise for the game. But with that said, there is so much more that lies deep beneath the surface that I won't spoil for you. Instead of cutscenes, the game has long sequences between each level, told by essentially TV channels being broadcast to you and your anime teammates having conversations with you. You are offered many different choices throughout the game that affect the overall narrative. Each decision has its own repercussions and can lead to one of the game's 5 different endings, offering entirely new missions and branching story paths depending on what you do. Here's a graph real quick describing your path as a player. If you want 100% the game, you'll have to complete 52 different missions. It's unique to see this different spin on the Ace Combat series. While I feel the impact of the game's story was hamstrung a bit by it being in Japanese and requiring multiple playthroughs to get through to its true ending, I like it when developers try something new. I don't think you need to play this game, but if you never play it, I highly recommend you watch this sweet video by Snickety Slice on YouTube giving a deep dive into its story, explaining everything and all its endings. It's so sick. I hope they remake this game specifically or remaster it fully in English. If this game were released today with its story, I think we'd be talking about it for a long time. I'm a little embarrassed to say I really loved Lollipop Chainsaw RePOP. Does it push the envelope in the hack and slash genre? No. Did it have a memorable story? No. Was it well polished? No. Was combat fluid quick and satisfying? Was it fun, however? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and I think that's starting to become a quality I hold highly in my games. It's fun, man. Fight zombies, do combos, the game doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a perfect 7 out of 10 game, if that makes sense. Some of the pop culture references and dialogue from the main characters Juliet and Nick are seriously funny. You'll go through a few levels, kill zombies, buy upgrades and costumes with the coins they drop. There's nothing deep here. Yeah, sure, it's insanely janky. It isn't the best looking game, textures look off, movement isn't fluid, it's full of bugs and glitches, but in the end, I still had a great time. The more I play games from Grasshopper Manufacture, the more I am a fan. There's always something of actual substance here and a good time always to be had in their games, even if their presentation isn't the best. I also might just be a gooner, I think. Fuck.
Excellent.
Alright, maybe I'm a bit of a gooner, but Vindictus Defying Fate's alpha demo hit the Steam store during the Steam Next Fest. I had no idea this game existed until I was recommended it, and I only had about 48 hours to play before the demo was taken down. I ended up playing a good 7 hours of the game before going offline. While I would definitely say that I had fun and the demo succeeded, making me wishlist it and keeping it on my radar, it does have some issues that I hope gets buffed out before its eventual 1.0 release or whatever they end up doing. It's obvious that the game wants to draw players in with its sex appeal and its outfits, and hope that they stay with everything else that Alpha had to offer. Gameplay wise, it was fine for a Souls-like, but I felt like it was missing some oomph. But visually, the game was just beautiful. In the first area, you'll fight the same monsters over and over, maybe there's like 3 in total variety-wise, and then you'll be going through these linear spaces to fight bosses peppered throughout. You'll do this for about 5 bosses, then go on to the next area, which is just more of the same. And there are a ton of bosses for this demo, I counted over 10. While yeah, the game was fun and the bosses were cool, the phrase less is more comes to mind. The bosses you fight are generally the same, they're mostly bigger versions of the mobs you've been fighting with just a different weapon. It gets a bit stale and would be cooler in my opinion, I think, to see a few more different species of boss rather than what we have here. The game definitely gives single player Black Desert Online or like some other MMO vibe, especially with its battle pass and how you're able to queue for certain bosses online. I'm a bit confused to see if this game is going to be a single player ARPG or kind of like a live gacha game, or if it's just like an MMO but single player focused that you could choose to invite your friends to queue up with if you like. Regardless though, I'm really curious to see how it shapes up when it's done baking. TimeSplitters 2 might be the most PS2 looking PS2 game ever. Everyone and anything has this sheen to them. The textures aren't super high resolution, but man, there's something about seeing games that look like this. Games nowadays sure are much better looking, but I wonder if we'll one day see a AAA company or indie game focus entirely on this specific graphical and art style for their games. PS1 style graphic games are getting really popular, especially in indies like Crow Country or Signalis, but I do wonder if maybe this PS2 graphical art style will make a comeback. Anyway, TimeSplitters 2 does everything the first one does, but better. There's a campaign mode you can go through with a ton of different missions and different difficulty levels, and each difficulty level provides different objectives and tasks for each mission too, which is nice. Although going through the levels the first time, I did get lost and confused on where some of the tasks needed completing. Similar to Ratchet & Clank, TimeSplitters is all about the guns. There are so many different guns that you get throughout the game, and each one is pretty distinct. I would have loved to see a radial wheel in the game to choose different guns rather than going one by one with the D-pad, but that's pretty minor. TimeSplitters 2 follows Sergeant Cortez as he travels throughout different time periods to stop the Time Splitters from altering history and destroying humanity. You'll be jumping through time, taking on different missions, fighting setting-specific enemies, equipping appropriate guns, and collecting the time crystals. TimeSplitters 2 is an all-timer and very iconic. While its pacing might have some issues, it's just so much fun to go in and seeing where you're gonna go next and what guns you'll get to equip. There's a ton to do here. Outside the main campaign, there's an arcade mode offering 45 unique missions, each with their own laundry list of tasks to complete with an insane amount of rewards upon completion. On top of that, there's a challenge mode offering an additional 27 missions to do. There's split screen co-op, a ton of different game modes and weapons to load up specifically however you want. There's a clunky map editor, but clunky map editor is better than no map editor. Like I said before, TimeSplitters 2 is an all-timer and is just oozing with personality. I'm really excited to play the final entry in the series, TimeSplitters Future Perfect, maybe later next year, but real quick, look at the main character on the CD. How sick is that? Dude just isn't even in frame and it's just super blown up. Dude, I love it. The TimeSplitters rules. On Soul alone, Onimusha Warlords is a 10 out of 10 game.
Men, fight and die with honor!
Imagine Resident Evil, like the original PS1 Resident Evil, but then make it set in Japan with demons and samurai. It absolutely rules, trust me. I think it might have the sickest opening cinematic out of any game I've played. Just what a way to set the game. It got me so hyped. The in-game cutscenes are like watching like an amateur film school project. You got these insane shots going back and forth at breakneck speed. You got poor acting, hilarious one-liners, weird pauses and pacing. For some, this might be a negative, but for me, in this specific game, I think it just elevates its absurdity. The game is a pretty faithful version of the original Resident Evil formula, although simplified quite a bit. You could spam square to swing your sword, triangle to do a magic attack, you can block with L1, and that's really all you're gonna be doing. Sure, you get a bow and arrow later in the game, but I never really utilized these in combat too much. As you defeat enemies, you suck out their souls into your gauntlet, but you could spend these souls on upgrading your weapons and magic, similar to how the original God of Wars did it on the PS2. Onimusha Warlords on the PS4 looks alright. It's basically a PS2 version upscaled into HD, but the backgrounds themselves I love. They're all CG rendered stills that look awesome, even if they did end up looking a little bit compressed here and there. The game isn't all good though. You might be hit off screen, or as soon as you enter a new area, instantly be hit by an enemy, which always feels bad. There are these hidden fluoride gems, which are an optional collectible hidden throughout the game, but until you get this item halfway through the game, they appear totally invisible. So you just gotta hug each wall while spamming X to see if you pick any up. The game has no autosaves, which is par for the course at the time, I suppose, which is, fine, but there was one moment in the game where it had 2 puzzles back to back, and if you failed these puzzles, you were instantly killed, resulting in a game over. And if that happened, you'd be sent all the way back to your most recent save and would have to get to that point all over again, and usually there was an unskippable cutscene moments before this, so you just gotta sit there and watch and do it all over again. Toward the late game, there's this other moment where you had to upgrade your magic. Your magic in Onimusha also acts as like a key as well as a special attack. If you have level 3 blue magic, for example, you can open up level 3 blue doors, if that makes sense. You'll have to end up upgrading all of these to the max to reach the end, and for me that required just a wee bit of mandatory farming. For a quick 4 to 6 hour game that you could beat in an afternoon, or in my case 2 work days, despite all this, I think Onimusha is totally worth playing. Sin and Punishment I've always known about because it's always brought up in the N64 Hidden Gem discussion. It's a on-rail shooter akin to Star Fox, with you being able to move left and right, but does have a bit of a learning curve with its controls. You have two main weapons in the game, excluding your sword. You have this blue gun reticle which locks onto enemies if you flick the analog stick, and a red version of it which does a bit more damage but doesn't have a lock-on. Fun fact, this game never got a North American release, but there is actually a really impressive fan translation made for it. It's got full text and pretty good voice acting too, to be honest. While I'm there though, I didn't really have that much of an idea as what was really going on or what happened. Sure, I have a general idea, but not the specifics, but the game has some really sick set pieces and cinematography throughout. You have some really nice dark reds clashing into whites, cool transitions and levels, interesting and fun boss fights, especially the last one. The game is very unique. It kicked my ass into some places, but maybe after 3 or 4 attempts at specific spots where I got stuck, I was able to get past it. If you have the means, I would say that Sin and Punishment is worth playing, just because of how sick the graphics are and its cinematography. While not an amazing game and the runtime is about 3 hours, you just have to see for yourself. Give it a shot.
Is this what works on you?
In 2022, my then girlfriend and now wife and I would visit Japan for the first time. We stayed for 2 weeks exploring the bustling streets of Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and others. Together, we would walk up to Fushimi Inari Shrine, where I would then propose to her. As a huge gaming nerd, Japan has always been a dream visit, and I'm so glad I forever got to cement Japan as that special place with my wife. It was truly a dream come true. While on vacation and traveling, we noticed that in train rides, in waiting lines, or just, standing around in general, that there were a ton of kids, adults, parents, and even some older people that were just glued to their phone. We didn't think anything of it because we too are also Stockholm Syndrome to this social media hellscape, but upon, just peeking across someone's shoulders, see what they're doing, then another's and another's, everyone was playing this brand new Monster Hunter game that dropped on iOS. I always knew that Dragon Quest and Monster Hunter games released in Japan are considered national holidays. I just had no idea that I would be there during one. So we both downloaded it and had some fun in between our stops. I bring it up because Monster Hunter is just such an insanely popular game and a global phenomenon. And it seems to have taken a hold on the Western market as well, because Monster Hunter Wilds came out this year in 2025 with a monumental 1,384,000 peak concurrent players on Steam during its launch. To be honest, I wasn't really that interested in Monster Hunter games before. Back in 2018 in college, I would occasionally walk up one of my best friend's Anthony's desk to see him grinding some Monster Hunter Worlds with his friend. Well, I thought the graphics were great and never really spoke to me. Then fast forward to 2021 and out came Monster Hunter Rise, and I tried it out on release with my friends for the first time, and dude, it was just incredible. I had such a great time playing with it. I know I'm yapping a lot here, setting the tone, but Rise was just so much fun. I knew I wanted to be there day one for whatever the big Monster Hunter game was next, because, hey, I'm a fan. Alright, so suffice it all to say, Monster Hunter Wilds finally dropped. And to be frank, while I didn't think it hit as hard as Rise for me personally, there is still a lot to like here. Yeah, despite its performance issues on PC, it's horrible. Yeah, absolutely agree, but just the game looks amazing. It looks so beautiful. The biomes you visit are varied and lush with fauna, rock, and tree. You can go out in the world, explore, you don't even need to accept a quest, just fight monsters, or alternatively, when you do accept a quest, just fight monsters on your way there. And yeah, I'm repeating myself, but man, just the monsters, the world, the armor, everything overall just looks awesome. Monster Hunter Wilds is about commitment. You have to commit to these hunts. Commit your time to defeat them before the clock runs out. Each attack and strike needs to be deliberately placed and timed so that you aren't interrupted and knocked back in the middle of it. At the time of writing, there are 14 different weapon types in the game, and each one, for the most part, plays differently from one another. While I was starting out, and I recommend you do this too if you pick the game up, is just keep rotating your weapons to just see what sticks. When you take down monsters, you'll be earning crafting materials to create new weapon upgrades and armor sets. The armor sets look so cool, like I said before, akin to these likes of raid sets in World of Warcraft. When you make it to the end and beat the story, the game really opens up. You have to raise your hunter rank, which is essentially your account level. Then you'll unlock even more monsters, harder versions of previous monsters, new equipment, weapons, special gems to give you stat buffs, and so much more. Monster Hunter, I think, to me, has always been about the end game. Now, I know with that said, when a game's all about the end game, sometimes the story doesn't really matter. It's just there to kind of guide you along the way, but Sure, the cutscenes are cool, but I just need to talk about the story for a second. I don't think I've played a more generic story in any video game in my entire life. To give a quick synopsis, it's all about finding a lost boy, learning where he came from, and hunting down the monster that separated him from his village. The dialogue here is just laughably bad. I remember there is a scene where you learn about the All-Harken or something, and the way this dude describes what this thing is and how he got his name being the All-Harken, he says like this rough quote. He says, quote, like, he's called the All-Harken because he harkens. I'm paraphrasing, but I remember laughing out loud and just shaking my head when I heard that. Ridiculous, what the fuck? There's another scene where this kid begs you not to kill a villain, like this big bad monster, makes a huge deal out of it, but you kill him anyway and the kid just doesn't care. So it's like they retconned it out of the game. Why would they write it like that? Later, toward the end of the game, you fight a boss and just boom, the game is over. I get that the games aren't known for its story and it's hard to create a narrative bridge between essentially a series of boss fights, sure, but to be honest, the story was just so bad here, I'd rather just not have anything at all. Anyway, that's just about the story. You can get through it real quick and then the game opens up. I just want to mention it. While Monster Hunter Wilds might not be my favorite, I still had a great time with it, and if you're a Monster Hunter fan, you know, you've already picked it up. But check it out if you want something new. I don't think I've played a game this year that takes itself less seriously than No More Heroes. You know when you're watching a TV show and someone is playing a video game on the TV, but you can't really tell what that game is? That is what this game looks like and feels like to me. It's a wacky, over-the-top video game inspired video game. Visually, it does come off stylized, but after staring at it for around 12 hours, I don't aesthetically think it was my cup of tea. You play as Travis Touchdown, who wants to be the rank 1 assassin in the world because a girl said he would sleep with him if he does. The gameplay loop is basically you start at rank 10 and you gotta work your way up to the top. To do that, you have to complete odd jobs around the world to earn enough in-game money to qualify for a fight. Then you unlock a stage specific for that boss, go through it, and well, fight the boss, rinse and repeat. While these jobs and this open world section act as filler and padding for the game, the jobs you do are fun for the first time, but do get boring pretty fast. When I was playing, I wish I could skip this mandatory grind so I could actually see what happens next in the story. When you do get to these boss fights, each level is uniquely set dressed to match that boss. However, in each level, you only fight one NPC henchman copy-pasted throughout that stage. And not to pile on, but for the Nintendo Switch version of the game, the audio peaks quite a bit too. What it does have going for it is its comedy and its characters. It has some really funny cutscenes and bits of dialogue that really kept me looking forward to seeing what happens next. There are some really funny one-liners said here too, like,
"It's open mic night in hell, old man. Sing all you want down there."
It's just so corny and hilarious, but man, the game absolutely knows this about itself and runs with it. Overall, it's not a bad game. I had a great time with it. And Grasshopper Manufacturer, the developers of this game, have made some other games that I beat this year, like Lollipop Chainsaw RePOP, and I'm a fan now. I'm really excited to see what else they've made. I feel like after a whole lot of nothing, we're in this brand new age of Silent Hill. To get the Silent Hill 2 remake in 2024 and now get a brand new Silent Hill game for the first time since 2012, and just in time in October, Silent Hill officially is back. I think a lot of people are really going to love Silent Hill F, and a lot of people aren't. I landed in the middle. On one half, man, what a great looking game with some really, really killer art direction. The areas you visit throughout the game are covered in a thick veil of fog for the most part, and all look very haunting and uncomfortable. And without revealing too much, some of the levels you go throughout the game just look absolutely stunning. On the other hand, as a video game, toward the end, it really started to fall apart for me and just became very stale. Silent Hill F at its core is a true Silent Hill game. Throughout the entire game, I'm guessing to myself what it all means. What do the enemies represent? What's the metaphor for the surroundings I'm in? Trying to tie it all to make sense, creating your own theory as to what is going on. Well, gameplay wise, I wasn't really having that much fun, to be honest. Story, character, and cinematography wise, it is a true Silent Hill game. I did have to pull out the old YouTube Silent Hill F explained upon completion, but I think those who love art house movies and allegory will really dig this. While we'll sadly never get a Jak 4, Naughty Dog's last game to feature this iconic duo was Jak X Combat Racing. I find it a little bit jarring that they would fully develop a racing game instead of a fourth mainline entry, but I suppose Ratchet & Clank did that on the PS2 with Deadlocked, although that wasn't a racing game, but you know what I mean. Anyway, Jak X is a futuristic, fast-paced racing game where you're blowing up enemy cars with power-ups, racing through huge tracks to hopefully land gold, upgrading your car, and a lot more. You have your normal races, there's death races where you'll have to destroy a number of cars passing you while doing laps around the, circuit. Arena levels battling and destroying enemy cars. You'll be unlocking new vehicles, cosmetics to change the appearance of your vehicle, new characters to play as, gameplay modes, maps. There's so much here. Graphically, I think this might be the best looking Jak game in the series. Sure, you're driving fast and can't really take the world in, but in passing, graphically everything looks great and really reminiscent of the classic PS2 art style we've grown to love. While there's a ton to do here, I think the game has a little bit of a pacing issue in its main campaign. For each level, you can earn a bronze medal, which gives you 1 point, silver 2, and gold 3. These points accumulate for each level, and once you've gotten around 50, you could take on the last level of each world. The thing is, by this game design, you'd assume that there would be quite a few optional levels that you could skip entirely, but instead, the game kind of has you 100%ing each level to reach the very end. Now, that's fine if you're all about how many hours you can get out of your game, sure, but I feel like this number should be around 70% instead. Pick and choose your races instead of being forced to do like 95 to 100% of them. This is not to say that Jak X is a bad game. The game is really, really fun and absolutely just an incredible racer. I think just for me in its story mode, it overstayed its welcome. With that said though, if you're into racing games, you should give Jak X a try. It's really, really good. There's a reason why when you look at the Metacritic's best games of all time, you see the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series in there. The simple task of you having 2 minutes to complete any number of tasks in any order with easy to pick up but hard to master controls makes these games so much fun. You start the career mode with pretty low stats, but in no time, once you complete objectives, grab hidden stat points to level up your skater, you'll be doing insane stuff in no time. The level design in these games specifically are really fascinating and deep. You wouldn't expect a silly Tony Hawk skateboard game to have this impeccable level of design, but think about it. The design is all about looping the map, having different routes connected by the same rails and lines. When you grind on a rail, you gain a bit of speed, but for every trick you do and different rail you grind, your point multiplier goes up. If your line ends or you don't see another rail to grind on, you can manual and continue the score but losing some speed. With enough skill and practice and overall knowledge of each level, you can do some really incredible stuff. The career mode acts as the main campaign of the game, similar to how it was in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. Go through a few levels, then do a competition, doing tricks and racking up points in under a minute 3 times to earn a medal, then continue until you beat the game. For completionists, there are so many unlockables and replayability options in this game. If you beat all 54 out of 54 goals and get gold medals in the career mode, you unlock new skaters, each with their own unique tricks and abilities. Do that gameplay loop enough times and you'll unlock even more skaters. And speaking of skaters, of course, there is a Create a Skater mode where you're able to customize your character however you please. There's a track editor too for making your own levels and more. When you do reach the end of the game and take down the final competition, which took me over a dozen tries to be honest, you are rewarded with an appropriate bail video and a secret level that wasn't previously shown in Level Select. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and the series in general is always a great time. What if, when Frodo and Sam reach Mount Doom to cast in the ring, Frodo would also have to sacrifice himself? Could Frodo do it? What if he found that out halfway through his journey knowing he would face death to stop Sauron? Again, could he do it? Would Sam deliver that burden instead? Was there any other way to do it? What options could they do instead? Would they try anything and everything to not sacrifice themselves? What if once they cast the ring in, it would just return somewhere in Middle-earth after X hundred years just for someone else to do it all over again? Is there any way to break the cycle? This analogy of Lord of the Rings is how I would compare the story of Final Fantasy X. You have this world-ending threat in the form of a Leviathan named Sin coming every 10 years or so, essentially destroying the world that must be stopped. But once stopped, something known as the Calm Period happens, where civilizations are remade, populations are repopulated, and everyone tries to rebuild, then just to do it all over again. The narrative in Final Fantasy X is definitely my favorite across all of the Final Fantasy games that I've played. Sure, some story beats are delivered awkwardly due to reasons I will speculate on later, but throughout the game it touches on themes of racism, nihilism, the afterlife, and of course sacrifice. Not to sound overly corny, but it is touching and beautiful, really. There's this one song you'll hear throughout your playthrough that's being sung in the background throughout the game. It has a bunch of different alterations and has a deeper meaning tied in toward the end, which I thought was really clever and thought-provoking. Don't think I've seen any other game do something like that. And of course, generally, I think this game has just a 10 out of 10 soundtrack. Along with a cast of characters, each with their own unique personalities and motives to continue, you pilot the role of Titus, a star blitzball player from Zanarkand, who, thanks to Sin, has his entire city destroyed and is brought forward in the future about 1,000 years. And all this happens within the first, the 30 minutes of the game. It's crazy. Your main gameplay loop of Final Fantasy X is similar to what it is in previous Final Fantasy games. Turn-based combat where you'll cast spells and abilities, swapping out members of your party, strategizing, and of course getting stronger. You'll get stronger in the form of a sphere grid, which is almost like a Path of Exile size grid, where as you earn ability points, you'll be unlocking nodes in this grid, which gives increases to your stats and of course unlocking abilities. One thing that I thought was really unique was that throughout the game you'll be meeting the Al Bhed, a technologically advanced people that speak in a different language. And as you play, you'll be finding hidden items that when picked up will translate a single letter of their alphabet into English, making you slowly understand what they're saying. Since this is a remaster of the original game that came out in 2001 on the PS2, you can see some really gorgeous, of the time, 3D backgrounds. As you enter rooms, new areas, and more, some backgrounds will essentially just be a JPEG, but man, dude, they look so good. On the other side of the spectrum, I think the cinematics are really exciting, but I don't really think they aged well, especially when it comes to the faces. Everybody kind of looks a bit plasticky. Speaking of faces, I guess, the voice acting throughout the game, while fine on its own, has some pretty weird pacing and perhaps lack thereof. Some lines are awkwardly delivered where it looks like they slow down voice lines to match the 3D mouth movement. I'm probably wrong, but it feels like the English voice actors weren't given clear direction on how to perform. One line might be said really fast, while another is just quickly said in an upbeat inflection. And then the next voice is just super slow and flat. I can't quite put my finger on why the VO is so strange. I wonder if it's a localization issue where they translated from Japanese 1-to-1 instead of using a proper vernacular and slang. Again, it's just a bit jarring, but that doesn't take away from the overall experience. And to be honest, toward the end of the game, I did find myself Googling on how to get through some certain bosses, because I got stuck at a wall on a couple of these. There's a pretty big difficulty spike. But after some grinding and practice, you'll always make it through. Anyway, I can keep yapping about Final Fantasy X, and there's some beautiful moments in the game's story that I'll be thinking about for a long time. Final Fantasy X wraps up with a really touching ending, and now, about 11 months later after beating it, I'm still thinking about it, which I think is why it's my favorite Final Fantasy story that I played out of the series so far, and my favorite retro game that I played this year. Before Rockstar made the incredible Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, there was Red Dead Revolver, the first foray and main entry in the series. While being part of the same universe, this game is totally different from its future predecessors, although still in that iconic Western theme. Red Dead Revolver follows the tropes of a revenge story where your parents are killed and the big bad stole your father's gun, and then your path to get that gun back and exacting revenge on all that did him wrong. Rather than the open world Rockstar game we are now used to, Red Dead Revolver plays out in levels with a cutscene in between and occasionally swapping out the characters you play as to add to the narrative. It truly is the humble beginnings of what would eventually culminate to Rockstar's magnum opus. You play as a cowboy named Red and go from mission to mission shooting up different Western themed levels, earning money, dueling enemies, and using your dead eye to slow down time to carefully place your shots. While the Western theme I think we've all grown to love, the game and story itself is pretty average with some issues for sure. Toward the middle of the game, in between missions, you'll stop by the town of Brimstone, and you can explore, talk to NPCs, and visit shops. These shops sell not only weapons to use in the main campaign, but journal entries which add a little bit of lore to the game, but also unique characters and maps that you could purchase too in the game's Showdown mode, which is essentially its multiplayer deathmatch mode with up to 4 players, which I'll talk about in just a sec. I like that Red Dead Revolver is focused mainly on its gunplay, short levels, and not taking itself overly seriously. Bosses bosses and enemies you fight might hurl gigantic boulders at you. One boss has a giant coffin on his back, and he not only swings it around, knocking you back, but can open it up, revealing a Gatling gun inside to shoot you down with. There's another boss in here that drinks these green potions that allows him to teleport all over the map. If you can suspend your disbelief, it's a lot of fun. I beat the main story in a span of 2 days, finishing at about 8 hours, and then tried out its showdown mode. And dude, I'm not saying this ironically, I think this mode absolutely fucking rules. I think it might be the highlight of the entire game. Like I said earlier, when you earn money throughout the game and when you have enough, you could buy new characters and maps specifically for this mode, and each character has its own unique moves that you can execute. There is only one mode here, which is deathmatch, but it has a bit of a twist. Enemies you kill drop playing cards, and when you pick them up, if you get a poker hand like combination, you will get bonuses like an ice rifle or explosive shotgun, triple damage, stuff like that. I bet that you could sink so many hours into these really quick 3 to 5 minute showdown matches. And to be fair, I think I had more fun playing this mode than I did the entire campaign. While Red Dead Revolver never had online multiplayer, I wish it did now, you know? I wish I could queue up online and play this showdown mode. I could do it forever. But regardless, Red Dead Revolver was pretty good for its humble beginnings, and I think its showdown mode specifically might be one of the greatest local multiplayer game modes of all time. The first Berserker Khazan, to me, I think is a pretty front-loaded game. It nails its Souls-like inspired gameplay and definitely wears its Berserk inspirations on its sleeve. But the more I played and the more I stared at it, the more I think it soured my overall opinion of the game. I really like how there's this XP system where if you die at a boss, you still get souls to level up even if you didn't defeat them, allowing you to slowly get more and more powerful each time you fight, until you eventually do take them down. With that said though, there's this one boss early game that represents this huge difficulty spike, the get good wall, if you will, and he's I think he's like Viper or something like that. But after I took him down after hours of grinding, everything after him kind of felt like a breeze, at least to me. As you progress through the game, you unlock new abilities and upgrades via skill trees. There's random loot dropped that you can equip to min-max your builds, and I especially love and am so thankful for that when you die, there's no loading screens. You just die and poof, you're back alive again. Dude, sick. I would say Khazan takes a bit more of a Sekiro approach than Dark Souls, because I was defaulting to rolling to dodge every attack in the game when the game's systems are built mostly around blocking just at the right time. Visually, when you first start playing a game, for me at least, I thought, man, this game looked really nice with its cel-shaded look and dark fantasy art style. But as you progress through these constant dark gray and brown levels, the game gets more and more bland as time gets on, at least for me. When I think of Souls-likes, I think of top-tier level design and gorgeous areas to explore, but here I didn't find any memorable set pieces, just dull gray areas that always overstay their welcome. I think it lacks a bit of creativity in that department, and I mean, dude, there's also a Sen's Fortress rip in the game from Dark Souls 1. The phrase, "you can copy my homework, bro, but don't make it look obvious," comes to mind. But at the end of the day, yes, I had a ton of fun with the first Berserker Khazan, and as a Souls-like, I think it does a really good job capturing the gameplay and feel of that genre, but just not so much on the visual fidelity as its inspirations. Now, I'm sure you know this, but Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers is a pretty darn good action beat-em-up. I remember playing this as a kid and thinking it was the sickest shit ever, and playing it as an adult, it definitely is still super badass, but man, the gameplay is just really outdated. Naturally, you have 3 default characters to start as: Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, each with their own unique upgrade paths, combos, and weapons. While you go through the story, you'll be playing through iconic Lord of the Rings scenes as these characters. While yeah, it's a bit outdated when compared to modern video game standards, there still is a lot of fun and replayability to have here. I vividly remember borrowing this from Blockbuster way back and having so much fun, and despite its shortcomings, there's still a good time to be had here. And as a side note, it wins my Game of the Year award for the coolest spine on the PS2. Check it out, look how the blue and black and yellow clashes one another. How cool is that? Like all of Vanillaware's games, everything in Dragon's Crown Pro is hand-painted. From the characters and enemy sprites, backgrounds, NPCs, bosses, you can take a screenshot at any moment while playing and throw it up on your wall. Dragon's Crown is a playable painting. The game is a beat-em-up with RPG elements. You get to play as one of 6 different playable characters, each unique with their own unique abilities, skills to unlock, playstyles, and equipment types. The story in Dragon's Crown is pretty exciting despite it all being told via a narrator. Explore the world
world, go from level to level fighting enemies, taking down a boss to eventually get the dragon's crown and save the world. As said earlier, the art is its main appeal. Each level is so gorgeous, and as you complete the game, each one actually has an alternative route with its own unique enemies and boss at the end. Like any game with really good art design, I'm always wondering what the next level is going to look like. What are the enemies I'm going to encounter? And of course, what's that last boss going to look like too? Overall, I think the game had a really solid difficulty curve. I would game over a couple times, but as you learn, gear up, get stronger, and of course get better, you learn to utilize your potions and position yourself accordingly for each fight. The gameplay loop here is tons of fun, leveling up, using skill points to unlock new abilities or to upgrade previous ones, and to of course earn and equip a treasure trove of randomly generated loot. As you equip yourself with stronger and stronger loot, you'll unlock harder and harder challenges, and upon completing the game, you'll unlock new difficulty settings, raising the level cap for each one and giving even more content to take down. This endgame grind has got a lot to offer, and if you're into it, there's potentially unlimited endgame grinding here. It's so much fun. I really enjoyed my time with Dragon's Crown Pro, and plan to one day go back and do it all over again with a different character. This game is an all-timer.
I want every fucking cop in this fucking city after that fucking bastard!
Do you remember that Beyond Good and Evil 2 trailer shown back in like 2017? Along with a lot of other people, I thought that trailer really did stand out with its clash of weird anthropomorphic characters mixed with actual humans with a grungy sci-fi aesthetic. I was thinking about that game, and now 7 years later with that game still not out, stuck in development hell, I found a copy of Beyond Good and Evil physically for sale and decided to pick it up. This is a remaster of the PS2 game that I remember seeing in stores just way back, and it's a pretty neat narrative adventure game. You play as Jade, who's a photojournalist and martial artist whose planet becomes under siege by aliens. Pretty simple. The planet's military defense force claims to be protecting the citizens, and there's something going on beneath the surface, and with your camera, you take pictures to expose what's really going on. I thought the camera system was pretty fun and unique. You go around taking pictures of different wildlife, and I guess it's animals or mobs, whatever you want to call them, and when you do, you are awarded with in-game currency. With this currency, you could buy upgrades and consumables, you know, the usual, but more importantly, these orbs stand as progression gates in the game. A little bit of a strange comparison, but much like Mario 64, you usually need X amount of stars to progress through Peach's castle, but in here, it's the same thing, kind of, but with orbs that allow you to progress through certain thresholds. It's really different, and a bit refreshing to see this sort of collectathon system in a non-platformer game. I think with the current video game landscape and everything trying to play it safe, Beyond Good and Evil is just a breath of fresh air, even if it is just a PS2 game. The puzzles and places you go to require you to look deeply at your surroundings. I think it's a pretty good game. With that said though, there are a ton of secrets and interactables that you need to use but don't normally look interactable. You're kind of just running into each wall and doodad in the game pressing X just in case. There are some weirdly uncanny points because it is a remaster of a PS2 game, but the textures have been remade to super high quality and fidelity, right? And I'm not really sure it meshes that well with the models kind of staying the same with these new textures overlapped on top of them. It had its ups and downs and is dated for sure in some places, but I'm glad I beat it. Maybe one day we'll finally get Beyond Good and Evil 2, huh? When I play games, I usually have a note document up to leave behind thoughts, criticisms, interesting moments that happened, etc. For Bananza, I was so locked in and was enjoying every second of the game that I didn't really write anything at all. If you played Super Mario Odyssey, then Donkey Kong Bananza will immediately become familiar, both in UI, look, and most importantly, feel. Odyssey has some of the best, if not the best, most responsive movement in any 3D platformer ever, and we can only wait and see if Bananza stands the test of time. But the movement here is so fluid and feels just about, if not on par, as Odyssey. You know, I'm really for Donkey Kong's visual facelift. He's so expressive and funny despite not speaking any English, and his companion Paulina is just such a great inclusion, speaking to the audience of what DK is thinking, tells you where to go next, her personal struggles, and just the overall narrative. Not gonna spoil anything here, of course, but there are some really exciting reveals in Bananza. I got the quote "true" ending after gathering 620 of the 777 bananas.
bananas, and it tied it all up in the Mario universe in the end. And unrelated, it made it extra special because it was the first game I beat on my Switch 2 as well. The level design in Bananza is top tier. There are multiple different ways to take on challenges and puzzles, some of which can be totally skipped with good precision platforming, or of course, just punching your way through. There are so many moments where you might wonder, ooh, what's up there, just to be rewarded with a banana or some collectible. Additionally, you might punch downward in a random spot and of course be rewarded for it too. It's really impressive. You have to see for yourself. I'm not sure how their QA and game design team managed to nail this. I think Bananza might be the epitome of childlike wonder. The game's gonna be an all-timer and an iconic Nintendo game, and from beginning to end, it's just so much fun. You'll be going from world to world, unlocking new abilities. You'll be getting new transformations that allow you to traverse the world in ways you couldn't do otherwise. You'll be punching your way through each level and collecting bananas. I really hope that kids especially resonate with this game as something they played on their Switch 2 that maybe they got for Christmas or their birthday or something. In a world of the permanent forever game and live service guff, I think about games I grew up with and can pinpoint my childhood to a specific memory inside a video game, reliving that experience over and over. I've never played a Prince of Persia game, but they've always been on my radar. I know Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time was an all-timer and propelled the third-person adventure genre forward. In 2024, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was released to pretty rave reviews, offering Prince of Persia but in a Metroidvania wrapper. While perhaps it isn't the most graphically gorgeous Ubisoft game out there, it still has some really great art design and overall an excellent Metroidvania. You can expect your typical Metroidvania gameplay here: explore the world, unlock new items that allow you to progress into new zones. Metroidvanias are one of my favorite genres just around, and in here I love that they included a guided mode. Reason being, in a lot of these Metroidvanias, I feel like it's pretty easy to get lost and then blocked, but here it just points you where to go. Other games like Blasphemous 2 and Animal Well kind of have a similar gameplay feature where there's a little dot somewhere on the map that points you to the right direction. I personally think this should be mandatory across all Metroidvania games. Like the amount of times I've recommended Hollow Knight or another similar game to a friend to have them bounce off for getting lost is just way too much. Like, this should be in all those games. Plus, it's totally optional, so if you like that traditional sense of playing Metroidvanias, you get the best of both worlds. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown also has a really clever map pin system in it, where you can normally put pins on the map, but if you hold down the D-pad, it takes an in-game screenshot of the location you are in, visible when you're hovering over that blip on the map later. What a smart idea. Much like those god-tier Metroidvanias, for The Lost Crown, it's all about its secrets. I'm constantly going all the way to each corner of the map, hitting each wall I possibly can, and breaking boxes to see if there's any secrets that lie behind them, which when they are feels really rewarding. In these hidden areas, you might find side quests, shortcuts, upgrades, notches, and more. Similar to Hollow Knight, the notch system is here, allowing for new ways to play your character and offering new moves and buffs, each of which you can upgrade up to 3 times. The weapons you use and the combat throughout the game is surprisingly pretty deep. I beat the game pretty much just spamming attack, but for example, there are combos where if you hit an enemy, you can hold a button to launch them in the air. If you hit them again, you could maybe shoot an air Wyndham that acts like a buffer and then continue the combo. It's like a fighting game, which I didn't expect, if that makes sense. I can't recall the name of it, but there are these like obelisks you can enter in the hub, which offer these insane, mega hard challenges you can do, rewarding you also with other in-game goodies. I gave one a shot and made it all the way through to what I thought was only one stage, just to realize it was a 3-part challenge. Yikes. You're constantly being drip-fed with new abilities and movements to get to new areas like in traditional Metroidvania fashion. But to me, I think Metroidvanias are essentially a test on level design and how well you can nail it. And most, if not all, design here is just really, really good. Not only just to look at, but to play. If I had any criticisms for the game or things I could think of to make it better, at least for me, I mean, I wish there were more teleport points on the map maybe, and maybe if there was like a homeward bone option where you could just bring it out and go to the most recent bonfire, that would be kind of cool, but I'm sure they've tested this, and I'm sure it's like this way for a reason. All in all, dude, I think this game rules. And again, this was my first ever Prince of Persia game, so not only am I really excited that I beat this, but I'm also stoked to play the other games in the series despite them being different genres. Absolutely check this out if you like Metroidvanias. Whew, what a ride. Man, I don't really know where to start with my thoughts on Death Stranding 2, to be honest. If you like Death Stranding 1, then I think you're gonna like Death Stranding 2. But if you didn't necessarily like 1 and its experimental nature, then I think it's gonna be a tough sell on the sequel. I didn't necessarily love the first game, I mean I really dug it, but I think my thoughts there are parallel here. I think Death Stranding 2, for lack of a better term, is much more video gamey than the first. Without spoiling anything, you're able to traverse the world quicker, there are of course in a sequel new weapons and plenty of unique gadgets to unlock and upgrade. Moments of action and combat I found to be much more frequent, which in turn, at least for me, made my time with Death Stranding 2 more fun. But with that said, I felt that the spooky enemies, the BTs, weren't nearly as scary as they were in the first, replacing these tense moments of careful stealth with faster paced combat, which is fine, I guess. In the nature of the walking simulator, there are still those long moments of traversal from point A to B and then sometimes even C. Toward the end of the game, I really just wanted to skip all of this running around and just get to the meaty bits. It's kind of like watching a really gripping movie, but right before you get to see what happens next, you're hit with a commercial break. I know that's what you sign up for in essentially what is Crazy Taxi with embryonic demons, but still. Anyway, Death Stranding 2 is the second part of a greater whole narrative-wise. These characters, the performances, the cinematography is totally unparalleled. I thought the first game was so fucking cool, and here it's being topped left and right. I really feel like the story explains itself here a lot better than the first. Crazy shit is going on, but I feel like I don't need to look up Death Stranding 2 explained on YouTube upon completion. Unsurprisingly too, at its core, it feels and sounds very Metal Gear Solid, and has plenty of references and nods to Kojima's original flagship. Now listen, with all of that said, sure, there are long traversal points from point A to point B, and that might get monotonous, but occasionally, dude, a song will start playing during that journey that hits just the right emotional note at the perfect time, and you just slowly RP walk to your destination, taking everything in these beautiful, cathartic moments. Fear Effect for the PS1 is something you have to experience. I don't see a lot of people talking about how unique this game is artistically and how it holds up as a game itself. I was really taken aback by its cel-shaded look. I mean, it could probably be confused for a modern indie game despite it now being over 26 years old. Man, there's something about these pre-rendered backgrounds the game has, and just its dynamic lighting from passing cars and other environmental effects that really just nails its vibe. In terms of gameplay, it feels very survival horror, albeit more upbeat spy action, and has taken inspiration from the roots of Silent Hill and Resident Evil with its classic tank controls. Going through its story with its really awesome cast of characters running around one-shotting enemies is just really satisfying. There are so many moments in this game that stand out. Just cool shit keeps happening. Now, I think I'm the first person in the world to relate Fear Effect to Dragon's Lair, but there are these interactive movies or cutscenes between moments, and if you miss a prompt, it'll result in an instant game over. Speaking of death, as someone trying it out for the first time with no prior knowledge of this game, dude, this game is tough, and I've had so many annoying instant game overs where, for example, I would accidentally touch fire and just die. That being said though, as it is an older PS1 game and maybe it can be forgiven because it's older, I did get soft locked about 70% of my way through my playthrough. It's been a while, but I believe I saved where I just had a sliver of HP and had to play perfectly, which just sucked. It's definitely a skill issue, but if you plan on playing this via an emulator and not on hardware like I did, maybe take advantage of save states. I know it's a little bit cheaty, but it'll help you get through it. That being said though, Fear Effect has left such a positive impression. I keep thinking about it and do want to tackle its sequel later on. They actually just released a remaster of it and its sequel for modern consoles. I don't know the sentiment around it, but with modern controls, quality of life, and trophies, which I'm a sucker for, I'm counting the days before I can hop in again. If you're not planning on playing Fear Effect, just like in the background, load up a long play, dude. You need to see it. It's awesome. Split Fiction, along with other recent Haze-like games like It Takes Two and A Way Out, have paved this new generation of the long-forgotten genre of the couch co-op game. My wife and I finally beat Split Fiction after playing it on and off, and man, it's just so good and refreshing in a day and age where couch co-op seems to be a long-gone afterthought. Without spoiling, of course, narratively it had a pretty solid story. Some of the performance of the game's main characters, specifically Zoe, fell a bit flat in our opinion, but everything else is just peak fun. There are so many unique gameplay twists and levels you go through. The bonus levels take on a whole game genre themselves. The moment you think you master a mechanic, it's going to introduce a new one. There's truly just so much fun to be had here, and I felt the difficulty was increased over their previous game, It Takes Two. Each of the two main characters you pick pick from in the game has their own unique gameplay elements that the other character doesn't get to use, which at the end of the game, if you want to play the game as the other character, you basically get an entirely new perspective and new playthrough. And of course, I'm not going to spoil, but the last boss fight is just really, really awesome. There's so much spectacle, and everything really ties together gameplay-wise from what you learned and saw throughout your journey. And best of all, you only need one copy to play. Pick it up, invite a friend who doesn't own the game, and play it through together, either online or together like we did on the couch. I'm really, really happy for Hazelight's now constant success, and I'm always going to be there day one for whatever they release going forward. This is my first time playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City. I know the general aura about it, how it's a fan favorite, and with GTA 6 taking place also in Vice City, I thought what better time than now to give it a shot. So Vice City, it's a Rockstar GTA game, so you know what you're getting into, but I was surprised by how heavily inspired Vice City was to Scarface. Coming off of GTA 3, you can see how much they improved on storytelling and quality of life over time. Sure, it's missing some modern GTA features, but it's pretty streamlined, although a bit disjointed here and there. And of course, the soundtrack here is an all-time banger. Each song fits the theme of Miami, and if I played this as a kid, I would immediately associate these tracks with Vice City. While playing the definitive edition version of Vice City, it's crazy to think how far Rockstar has gone since 2002. GTA's core DNA is felt here throughout all of Vice City and all the way to now. With that said though, and to touch more on what I said earlier about Vice City being slightly disjointed in some places, there are some difficulty spikes here with some missions and some lock-on issues, enemy spawns, and especially the end of the game, where to access the last mission you have to take over all of Miami. When I say Miami, I mean Vice City, but thematically that sounds so cool, but I wish the game told you that you had to do this. So you have to go from area to area, grinding for money, then purchasing properties. Then you do missions in those assigned properties, and then you just move on to the next. Now as I write about it and say it out loud, maybe it isn't that big of a deal. The game doesn't tell you where these properties are, so you have to explore and find them yourself, which I suppose in itself is pretty cool and boosts the immersion for those wanting to soak it all in. Some of these optional side missions to 100% are brutal to complete, but do offer replay value and of course gives you additional missions to do. You'll be delivering pizzas, picking up and dropping off pedestrians in a taxi or ambulance, gunning down vigilantes, so, you know, just the Grand Theft Auto works, if you will. I played the remaster, and while it's neat to earn trophies on my PS5, dude, the faces look so bad. I would watch cutscenes on the remastered version, then compare them to the PS2 version, and it's just a world of difference. All facial expression is gone, except replaced by faces that look like that one picture of the Christ painting that was painted over. The story, while classic Rockstar and very Scarface, didn't hit with me as hard as future Rockstar games do, but that doesn't mean that the story is bad. It still has this memorable cast of characters and missions. I was having such a blast with the game that I decided I wanted to 100% it, but after getting about 30% of all collectibles, doing side missions and more, I think I decided that I want to save that energy for San Andreas instead. I think Vice City in the end was worth playing and stands the testament of time, and I'm really excited, like I said earlier, to get into its sequel, which I've never played before. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 has so much good going for it. I'm not sure why other games haven't done this, but it takes inspiration from World War Z's gigantic zombie mobs but replaces it with in-universe Warhammer enemies. To me, and this is a good thing, it feels a bit Gears of War inspired with gameplay elements like from Left 4 Dead and Doom. Appropriately, you play as a gigantic Space Marine, hacking, slashing, and blasting your way from level to level. You know, I didn't expect the story here to be anything to write home about, but the main character Titus has an engaging one, albeit a little depressing, but it's appropriate for Warhammer as the lore tends to be that. Everything here is overly Warhammer and super grimdark. The spectacle is amazing here. Despite the universe being so war-torn with constant conflict, there are some truly incredible set pieces that you just can't help yourself but to stop and take it all in. On top of the campaign, which you must play, it's so good, there are loads of PvE multiplayer missions where you can unlock gear for your Space Marine, and of course PvP modes as well. The amount of content here is just really impressive. It truly is a buffet of different gameplay modes. It reminds me of those Xbox 360 era days of gaming. The scope here in Space Marine 2 is just massive. It's really extensive, and I think I'll be coming back to it every time there's a new update.
You know, I've been thinking, I wonder what the greatest non-traditional sports game is, let alone what's the greatest golf game of all time. When I say non-traditional, I mean perhaps more arcadey and extreme, the likes more of SSX, NFL Street, Hot Shots Golf, stuff like that. Not to say that traditional sports games don't hold value. I mean, sure, modern sports games are known to be copy-paste every year filled with microtransactions, but if you look at Metacritic, some of the best games of all time are those traditional sports games like Madden 2003 for the PS2 with a Metacritic score of 95 and NFL 2K1 for the Dreamcast with a whopping 97. Anyway, I thought it'd be fun to seek out more obscure and non-traditional sports games when I'm out retro game shopping to see if there's some bangers out there that I didn't know of before. The Hot Shots Golf series, or Everybody's Golf series as it's known in Japan, has been around since 1997, and I remember playing a ton of Hot Shots Golf 3 and 4 with my dad on the PS2. And when I found out that a new game entry came out in 2025, excuse the pun, but I had to give it a shot. Now with all that said, after about 20 hours of playing Everybody's Golf Hot Shots, it's a pretty dang fun golf game. I was taken aback by the amount of game modes there is to compete in here. There's this challenge mode where you'll obviously beat challenges and courses to fill up your VS gauge. And when that's full, you unlock a battle with a new golfing competitor. You beat them and unlock the opportunity to obtain that golfer to play in future matches along with another set of missions increasing in difficulty. You'll be leveling up your golfer and caddy, earning a currency to use on a plethora of things like new golf balls, clubs, and customization options. Dude, it's crazy the amount of things you could buy to fully customize how you play. Also, you can purchase and earn food which incrementally increases your golfer's stats, adding a sort of RPG progression, and each golfer has their own respective stat lines. Brushing over modes like online, stroke play, and wacky golf, which each should be pretty self-explanatory, there is World Tour mode. Here, each golfer has their own story mode with voice-acted scenes and their own missions. Granted, to be honest, I didn't really think there's anything of actual substance here, but I figured it's worth mentioning. The game itself looks alright, kind of like a Pokemon vibe for lack of a better term, and very anime. And dude, I swear every girl character here has a midriff, but I feel like there's a loss of visual identity between those characters because they all just kind of look the same. With 30 characters, it does take a long time to unlock everyone, and if you wanted 100% the game and unlock everything, How Long to Beat has a tally taking about 134 hours. Oh, and one nitpick here that I think is worth mentioning that I hope gets patched later is the amount of speaking your opposing golfers have. God forbid you take more than 10 seconds to swing, you'll hear your caddy and another golfer complain about how long it's taking. Luckily, you could turn down the golfer's audio in the settings, but dude, it's just kind of funny how much shit talking there is. But at the end of the day, it's cathartic to just lean back, load up some YouTube or movies on the side, and just golf. You don't really play Asura's Wrath as much as you do watch it. I'd say between cutscenes and gameplay, this game was leaning more toward 25-75 with cutscenes taking the lead. While the game has some really over-the-top spectacles and it feels a bit like you're playing an anime, there's just so many QTEs. Like dude, every single thing you do has a QTE. Every cutscene has a QTE. It's almost absurd. Moments where you're finally getting into it are immediately snuffed out due to some interesting design choices. Like in the story, which is fun on its own, it's just like what I said before. Like watching a high-octane anime fight like Naruto vs Sasuke, then you beat the episode, there's a straight spoiler of what to expect in the next episode. It just kind of ruins any flow and possibility of guessing of what's going on next. I was playing on the Xbox 360 and there's major audio issues where the characters' voices are barely audible due to everything being so loud, there's recycled bosses and just more. It's a bit messy. And yeah, it sure does have its funny and memorable moments, but it just barely feels like a video game. But that's probably my fault getting into it as I just didn't know what to expect. Perhaps it's worth treating more like a movie and watching the entirety of the game cut down instead. That said, there's plenty of games like Dispatch or other Telltale games that do something similar, but here I just wasn't that big of a fan.
And maintain order. How pitiful.
Earlier this year, I really wanted to explore some of the Game Boy Advance's library, especially its best games of all time. While I picked up a few games throughout the year and played the likes of Pokemon, I wanted something new. So my buddy sold me his Game Boy Micro, and I thought what better way to break it in than to play The Legend of Zelda the Minish Cap. So mainline Zelda games are usually made in-house by Nintendo, but here with the Minish Cap, this was actually developed by Capcom. Normally, you think of a spin-off game usually being that of lower caliber, but here I couldn't tell the difference at all. This is a Zelda game through and through. Each Zelda game tends to have its own unique spin. For this entry in the series is the appearance of a character named Eslo, who has been transformed into a green cap that Link wears. The cap not only talks to you throughout the game, acting as a guide and giving banter, but the cap allows you to grow and shrink at certain points. In addition to being the main tool for puzzle solving, as you shrink down, the world around you changes according to your size. I don't mean visually, although the miniature pixel art is top tier, but stairs, for example, you can't climb when shrunken, or small pits used to boost Link up are now huge pitfalls. While the levels you're in don't necessarily change when you're tiny, I thought it had some really interesting and smart decisions in level design and offers a pretty cozy vibe. Speaking of levels, the dungeons here are each super unique and very fun to go through. Sure, like most Zelda games, for me personally, I'd get stuck and have to look something up, but the amount of depth and surprising amount of verticality and layers in this handheld Game Boy game was just really impressive. The sense of adventure you feel in a Zelda game is just unparalleled to any other game. I think of Zelda games generally as over-the-top Metroidvanias. You have a huge world to explore, and to progress you need new tools that allow you to reach places you wouldn't be able to otherwise. And the exploration and world here really opens up the more you progress. There's a new mechanic here too called Fused Kinstones, where you have to pick up these halves of a kinstone and talk to NPCs around the world that might have the other half. If you do combine these halves, somewhere in the world something changes, whether a fallen tree blocking a path is fixed, an NPC spawns, a new quest appears. It makes the world feel like it's constantly changing and rewarding you to go that extra step and explore. In the end, man, I don't think I've had any complaints or criticisms about the Minish Cap. Its difficulty curve I found to be really fair. Some places are harder than others, and toward the end I found the last dungeon to be pretty difficult, but after a few game overs you'll be able to make it through. The Minish Cap is a pretty amazing Zelda game, and I'm surprised this spin-off entry in the series was just so good, and all of it fit inside a tiny Game Boy Advance cartridge. And I'm happy I got to cross off another Zelda game in the series. Created by ex-Telltale Games developers and partnered with the people behind Critical Role came Dispatch, an interactive movie-style game where you're a former superhero taking the job as a superhero 911 dispatcher. Dispatch is made of 8 episodes you play through, where you try to reform a team of villains into heroes and the antics you face along the way. While there really isn't much in terms of gameplay here, I still ended up loving it, and it was really refreshing to play a pseudo Telltale game again. Without showing too much here, you can tell that the game just oozes personality. Each character has a unique backstory and is generally well acted and animated. You make some tough choices here and there, but otherwise the story is very on rails. While in Telltale's The Walking Dead, there are plenty of narrative choices and things to do in between those key story beats, but here it's basically 8 30 to 45 minute episodes you watch, make decisions in between, and do the main gameplay bit of dispatching, resulting in generally the same outcome. Dispatching is fun and heavily inspired by the game This Is the Police and 911 Dispatcher. While it is something to break the gameplay up, like I said there before, there isn't really much game here. The gameplay isn't the main course here. The narrative and the characters are just so much fun, despite it being, to be honest, a little cringe here and there with excessive dick jokes and using the word fuck every other sentence. I mean, I swear a ton in my personal life, but damn, like here they say fuck like every other sentence. I was so into the game that I bought the Deluxe edition just to read its additional comics and check out its art books, which to be honest I've never done for any other game. Anyway, when it comes to superheroes, I'm just so burnt out, but shows like The Boys, Invincible, and now Dispatch breathe such a refreshing take on the genre. I've thought about Dispatch a ton since I beat it, teasing the idea of going back again and making other choices. I do recommend playing it. It's just packed with personality and charm, and I'm really hoping to see if they make Season 2 down the line, which I'm sure they will, as this is Ad Hoc Studios' debut title, and at the time of writing, Dispatch has sold over 2 million copies. Check it out.
The answers are out there if you just listen to the wind.
In September of 2025, in a Nintendo Direct to support the future release of Super Mario Galaxy Movie, Nintendo decided yet again to port Super Mario Galaxy 1 to the Switch, but this time they included the previously trapped entry Super Mario Galaxy 2 also to the Switch. Now this is my first time ever going through Super Mario Galaxy, but there's just so much to like, wow. As appropriate with galaxies and space, I guess, each little planet you visit has its own layer of gravity, so you're jumping and orbiting around these planets as your camera seamlessly follows you around. Movement and precision is the bread and butter of Mario games. It's really precise here, and it feels great. And sure, because of the 3D orbit system around planets, your character might move in a different direction than you're facing with your analog stick, but you can smooth that out pretty quickly. There are 120 stars to earn throughout the game, and each planet contains a few stars as you would expect, changing changing each time. To talk more on that, as you jump into levels and pick which star you want to chase, the level is totally changed up, not the same each time like Super Mario 64 for example. While I didn't clear the full 120 stars, I was able to beat the game at 65 stars, and I've been thinking about Super Mario Galaxy, and I think I want to go back eventually and get each one. This game still holds up, as to no surprise to anybody, and I'm planning to play Galaxy 2, which I hear is an even better version of Galaxy 1. In the discussion of the best JRPG series, I often hear the Trails of games being thrown in there. I would hear that the 2004's The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky was the best the series had to offer, and this year there's a full remake of that game named Trails in the Sky First Chapter. Now, like I said, this is the first Trails game I played, and wow, what a great introduction. I somehow managed to roll credits beating the game in about a week. I don't know how I've done this, but I was just so locked in. The game itself, I would say, isn't super high stakes like other JRPGs out there. Besides the last act of the game, it's really chill and kind of low-key. Giving a super brief summary, it's about you and your adopted brother Joshua joining the Bracer Guild and solving problems as you travel from town to town. The Bracer Guild is somewhat like an adventurer's guild or police, kind of. You complete quests, travel the region, and move up in your Bracer rank. Sure, there's an overarching story that really unveils itself about 50% of the way in, but it's nice when the stakes are chill. The game looks really colorful and very anime, but while I'm not the biggest fan of watching anime, I've always loved anime art style, especially when it looks like this. In terms of gameplay, there are two ways of combat which you'll be spending most of your time doing. There is overworld combat similar to Metaphor ReFantazio, where you can battle enemies in a non-turn-based fashion, dodging attacks and smacking them over and over until they die. Then there's the turn-based combat, where you'll cast spells you could slot into via a thing called orbments of varying elements, hitting weaknesses of your targets, and then leading up to an all-out attack. There's more to that. You can move around the battlefield while it is turn-based, and a majority of your spells and abilities have area of effects, so you'll be positioning yourself and your enemies to line up to deal the most damage possible. It's pretty fun and refreshing. The game is very generous with its quality of life and overall difficulty. You can speed up the game to 2x speed in the overworld and 4x speed in combat, being in and out quickly. And if you ever get stuck, you could always just retake the boss you wiped on again with reduced enemy stats. The game wants you to win, no grinding necessary. While I didn't think that the overall story was that interesting or super exciting, there were some standout characters. It's nice to play a JRPG that isn't all about saving the universe and killing God or whatever. I know it's the first chapter in the remake series. I don't know how many more chapters they're gonna do, but what a great refresher, I think, at least for me. Oh, and without spoiling or showing any footage of it, of course, after you roll credits, they show a fucking teaser for the next game. Yeah, I'm absolutely hooked now. Are you kidding me? The amount of confidence that the developers have in their products to do that is pretty sick, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, I'm now a fan, and I'm glad I played it all the way through the end. Excited to see what happens too in the next chapter, whenever they release that this year in 2026. Oh boy, dude, TimeSplitters Future Perfect is the last game in the series we would get. The game series was developed by Free Radical Entertainment, a now shut down studio formed by ex-Rare developers that created the legendary GoldenEye and Perfect Dark for the N64. This game is the culmination of everything the team has learned throughout the years, and what we have here is one of my favorite games I played last year. TimeSplitters Future Perfect is just packed with content. In its 13 mission campaigns, you go through unique biomes and levels, traveling back and forward in time to help you take down the big bad. Dude, it's so sick and really funny too. I'm surprised other games haven't taken this narrative approach where your main character here, Cortez, helps out his past self through cutscenes and gameplay. Then you later become your future self to help your past self. It's really clever. And the whole story can be played fully in co-op as well. All my complaints from TimeSplitters 2 are addressed here and totally fixed. 2 is worth playing, but just wow, Future Perfect is just so much fun. And dude, like I said before, each level is totally unique and there's such a good story behind it. There's really likable characters, especially the main protagonist Cortez, and these cutscene animations are really fluid. Everyone is really well animated and dude, it's just so funny. You gotta play it.
Hey, you're no zombie.
Oh, yeah.
The game even has its own gravity gun, perhaps taking inspiration from Half-Life 2's physics gun. This is just such a video game-ass video game. There's a ton to unlock, 150 unique characters you can earn, each with their own unique stats and voice lines, levels and game modes to play, cheats, and more. When you're done with the campaign, which each level has its own unique objectives to complete per difficulty setting, you can take on the game's challenges and arcade league mode, offering 48 totally separate missions, each with their own fun tasks to tackle. tackle. Then there's the game's multiplayer mode. Now, I'm coming in about 20 years after the fact, but I could imagine playing this in its heyday must have just been a blast, and I'm envious of those who were able to play. And then there are loads of multiplayer and arcade maps that aren't recycled from the game's campaign, but rather their own unique stages, which was such a surprise, just providing so much level diversity. And finally, like TimeSplitters 2, it has its own level editor where you can create your own campaign missions if you want. You can do multiplayer maps and more. If you have the means, dude, you have to play at least the campaign here, which you can clear in about 6 hours. I completed the campaign on normal and each of the 48 separate challenges in about 10 hours, and dude, I just had so much fun. And after writing this in 2025, about a month later, a group of passionate fans have released TimeSplitters Rewind in early access. It's a fan remake of the games which you can download and try out for free. And as I VO this, dude, I'm kinda chomping at the bit and I want to do it all over again. Unbeatable is a game I was really looking forward to, a Kickstarter indie project rhythm and narrative game, but man, Unbeatable, where do I start? Unbeatable is played in two parts. There's a rhythm-based game in the arcade mode where you can play some really killer tracks in a unique twist to the genre. And then there's a story mode, which is a really mixed bag of sadly more bad than good, I would say. Visually, for a debut title from a small indie team, it looks really good for the most part. Unbeatable is a small passion project, again launched on Kickstarter, so I had to give it full credits for what it is, which is a pretty memorable and fun rhythm game, although containing a confusing and albeit jarring story. As you can probably tell just by looking at it, Unbeatable has so much soul, it's unbelievable, and some really memorable and thrilling moments in its story, but dude, to get there you gotta slog through boring, monotonous gameplay sections. But man, the highs are so high, especially in its phenomenal ending, if you have the patience to make it that far. When not in combat via the gameplay's rhythm-based mode, you have these sections of you running through repeat areas of a map, exhausting dialogue with every NPC so you could finally get the trigger you need to make progress. While the writing is good at some points, I felt like it dragged on and on in some places. Every allegory and metaphor is explained, and moments where something impactful happens, it's sometimes interrupted with something mood-killing. Not all the time though. That said though, I really liked the main characters in the story. It felt like each one was totally characteristically different from one another. None of them felt boring really, at least for the main four characters that is. There are some weird production incongruities, I'd say, like the scene where your party is being interrogated, and while the main character looks good, it pans to the other guy and they just look really bad. But that can be excused. I think as a rhythm game at its core, Unbeatable lives and dies by its soundtrack, in which again there are some really great tracks, a lot of which aren't even shown in the main story mode, but are ready to play in the arcade mode. At the end of the day, I think I was pretty lukewarm on Unbeatable. Its highs, like I said, man, are so high, and I'll be thinking about them and coming back to listen to a few songs like Bookend, this incredible multi-song banger, but main story-wise to get there, you really have to work for it. While the story itself I found to be punching above its weight and overly convoluted, I'm glad to see an indie game like this make the rounds. I think Unbeatable for sure is really gonna click for some people the way Undertale and other breakout indies have. Indie games are the heart and soul of the industry right now, and I hope with this game's success and now cash influx, their next game could be even better and much more polished. So, I've been putting off Baldur's Gate 3 a bit since its release. It was always on my radar because I was a huge fan of Divinity Original Sin 2, and that game, dude, is like 10 out of 10. When the developers Larian Studios' next game came out in Baldur's Gate 3, I wanted to wait and savor it a little bit. While the game was in early access, I managed to play maybe 10 hours but stopped because I wanted to play the complete package. And then when I played it when 1.0 came out, I played it all the way to the end. And at the end of that 75-hour and 40-minute journey, I think I could safely say this might be just the best one they've ever made, if not the best game I've ever played. There is really nothing here I could say that hasn't been said tenfold by the community. The game is pure imagination manifest. As you know, Baldur's Gate 3 is based around Dungeons and Dragons, and the entire D&D formula is built around player creativity, improvisation, and saying what if. Experimentation is key here, and almost anything you think of when it comes to solving a puzzle or objective or exploration, it's totally possible. It's game design 101 to reward players with exploring in video games, and you want your players to be enthralled by your game and to spend the extra few seconds just to go around a corner to see what's there. If nothing is there, the player will be discouraged to do that and probably won't explore again. There are numerous hidden secrets, treasures, and quest lines that have been off the beaten path here. If you could think of a way to get to a spot you see or a solution you could think of, I guarantee you it's possible. I'm really interested in seeing how long the script is for this game because there's so many branching narratives throughout the game depending on who you are, who's in your party, what items you have, and what experience you've done and what you've said. It's just truly remarkable, and on top of just talking, you can speak with every animal you see and they have their own dialogue trees. You can read the minds of other NPCs. You can speak with the dead. Like, the amount of detail is just unparalleled to any other game. I can probably guarantee you that each playthrough here is just totally different. There's just so much. And of course, not to mention too, the incredible cast that is in your party, with each character having really captivating stories and being unapologetically themselves. As someone who loves video games and of course game design, and someone who works in the industry, when I play games I often think to myself, what can make a game better? And I encourage this critical thinking in the terms of ludology for those who are interested in it, just to jot down ideas and notes as you play. But here, man, throughout my whole game experience, I cannot think of a single thing that would make this game better. I played and cleared the entire game on its hardest difficulty, Tactician mode, which I felt looks like a really fair balance overall. Normally in RPGs, I tend to just not really pay that much attention to potions and scrolls you pick up, essentially if you're just steamrolling through the game without them, but in this difficulty setting, I found myself using them a lot too and adding an additional layer on top of the game. I could talk about Baldur's Gate 3 forever, and while I want to keep this Baldur's Gate 3 section as brief as possible, because like I said before, I just don't have anything to say on top of it that just hasn't been said in the discussion already. I don't believe in the perfect video game, but for me, Baldur's Gate 3 might be as close as we're ever gonna get. And alright, we made it to the end. So there's about 85 to 90% of the games I've beaten in 2025 and some of my thoughts on them. There were a ton of other games I wanted to talk about. Maybe I'll save them for next year if I do this again, like Defenders of Oasis for the Game Gear, Breath of Fire 1 for the SNES. I'll put a list on the screen of all the games I beat but didn't get the time to talk about. Maybe I'll do it next year. But yeah, that's it. Let me know if you picked up any games because of this video, and maybe I'll do another one next year. If not, appreciate you watching all the way. See you never.